The story begins with Kadoyama Ritsuki seeing that he was accepted into the computer engineering college. This was the moment when he received his acceptance letter from that college. However, because he was distracted, a truck appeared in front of him, and he had a tragic end, losing his life. He could not believe the shitty life he had, because he thought his college life was finally beginning, and dying in the middle of the street like that was pathetic. However, when he opened his eyes, he realized that something was wrong. He reincarnated as Ian, the son of a farmer. His parents could not believe the birth of a child with black hair. They lived as imperial farmers, and his family was predictably miserable. He was the third of 4 siblings and suffered from hunger every day. So, when his parents and his 2 older brothers went out to work, he took care of his little sister, wandering around all day in search of food. People from afar found him disgusting to the point of calling him a crow, and he got angry, since it was not as if he wanted to be born with black hair. All of this is crap for him, since he finally reincarnated and ended up stuck living in total poverty. Only then does he notice something strange, since a system screen is in front of him, showing his name. He realizes that a status window has finally appeared, and the system prepares to say what he really is, but he becomes completely frustrated when he reads that he is a nobody. He does not even get excited anymore, since even with a system screen appearing, it is not as if he can do anything, since he works himself to death in the fields every day, but is still drowning in debt, with nothing to show for it. He is only following in his parents' footsteps. Unfortunately, he cannot even dream of being anything other than a peasant, and is aware that he has no chance to learn anything new. Even imagining that he could be a warrior or a painter, he knows he would do anything very well, as long as he studied. Thinking about all of this leaves him frustrated, not knowing if there is any place that would simply take care of him. After all these thoughts, he notices that his sister is drooling over the fish he is holding, so he gives her the piece, since, whether he likes it or not, she is his little sister. Sometime later, they walk through the forest again, and he asks her not to stray too far. She keeps picking some little fruits, and he is happy that she is growing quickly. At that moment, he notices something strange, since a very large shadow is approaching, until the scare becomes even greater when he sees that it is a huge bear in front of them. The animal attacks, and he runs while hugging his sister to protect her. At that moment, a powerful lightning bolt strikes the bear, leaving it completely electrocuted to the point of dropping dead on the ground. Ian does not really understand what just happened, and a woman approaches, giving her greetings. She asks if that is the Feldenberg region, and he answers yes. But inside, he wants to know who the hell she is, since she was strong enough to defeat a bear. She introduces herself as Elidis, a wandering mage. Ian is surprised to hear this, since mages are incredible people. They are powerful beings who appear on the battlefield wielding brilliant abilities and immense destructive power. However, he has no idea why someone like her would be in that backwater place. Elidis reveals that she is looking for the black-haired boy who lives in town and asks if, by any chance, there are any other black-haired boys besides him. The MC answers no, since he is the only one. She says that it is probably him. That is because an old man told her to find a black-haired boy who lives in the Feldenberg region and make him her disciple, since good things would happen. She remembers that request and analyzes that, indeed, the boy is a mixture of curiosity and fear and has a very vivid aura. She laughs, since she did not imagine she would find Ian so quickly. He does not understand, since, as far as he knows, all mages are eccentric and terrible. But she seems to be kind. Besides, the lightning power he witnessed was incredible because it annihilated a bear instantly. He calls her attention and asks about the magic she used on the animal. She likes seeing him interested in it, and the MC admits that, at first, he thought it would be scary, but seeing it in person was incredible. Elidis says it is not that big of a deal since anyone can master it. He thinks about this and asks if, by any chance, he could learn to use magic too. She smiles and answers yes, because he would definitely be able to do it if he found a good master, and thus he would become a powerful mage. Elidis gets straight to the point and says that she can teach him, and because of that, she wants to know if he wishes to become her disciple. He knows that this may be the chance to change his life, because it is a path beyond being a peasant. Without thinking too much, He takes her hand, saying that it will be an honor. He goes to her house sometime later, and Elidis throws a book in front of him, since he will need to study a lot. It is about Maronius, the fundamental foundation of magic. Before that, she went to the MC's house to ask his parents for permission, and since both his parents and the lord of the city allowed it, she is ready to teach. He shouts that he is ready to give it his all, and his studies begin with the knowledge percentage starting at 1%. Much later, it rises to 27%, and after several books, reaches 53%. After long hours of studying, his progress reaches 100%, and the ability to perfectly use magical language is obtained. With that, we have a 7-year and a time skip to the future, and his teacher says that this moment marks the end of his theoretical studies. He thanks her since he is excited for the next step. Ian is a novice mage who possesses the magical language ability, which is the capacity to manipulate magical languages. They go to a mountainous region, and the MC begins to scream desperately, falling from the sky. Elatus looks excited about his performance, but all Ian can do is scream desperately since he is going too fast. And all he has learned in the last 6 years was Maronius. She watches him plummeting and tells him to listen to the voices. He does not understand what that means and starts wondering what voices he should hear outside, since he cannot hear anything besides the sound of the wind. At that moment, some voices begin whispering that a human is flying. He is surprised and wonders if, by any chance, it is the Maronius language. With that, the aeromancy ability is acquired, which is the capacity to manipulate wind magic. He finally returns to the ground, completely battered from hitting the branches, and she says that, at least, he managed to hear the voices once. After all, a mage gains power by communicating with the mysteries of all things. She reveals that this is true magic, and since he managed to hear the voice of the wind, it is time to hear the next mystery. He says that he is prepared, and she says the first one will be hydromancy. With that said, the MC is thrown into a lake, and the voices begin telling him to get out since he is polluting the water. The next mystery is cryomancy. He is thrown into the snow, freezing to death, and the voices ask if, by any chance, he is cold. After all of this, his teacher praises him, since he is mastering everything at an incredible speed. Because of that, she snaps her finger and creates an immense wall of fire, which leaves Ian terrified, not understanding why that is happening. Several voices come out from within the flames, wanting to know if, by any chance, they can burn him. The MC screams for help, since this is getting way too crazy. Sometime later, he enters a cave and says that he has finally reached the last one, which is geomancy. The voices from inside say that something flows, and that it cannot be said to flow simply because it does not move. Ian cannot understand what the hell they are saying, and believes that maybe he does not have enough affinity with geomancy and will need more training in other areas. At that moment, his system appears in front of him, telling him that he gained a bonus, which was skill points. He must use the points to increase his magical proficiency. He thinks this is incredible, since, from the looks of it, he really is an overpowered player in that world. He decides that he will use the points to raise the level of geomancy because he cannot understand a single word of the mysteries. When he does this, a strong glow emerges from the system, and the voices say again that lava flows beneath that ground. It erupts when the earth trembles, so he must be careful. He finally understands at least a little and decides to return to tell his master that he heard the voice of the earth. With one of his skills, he sets his torch on fire, but the voice complains, since it hates light. The MC notices that it is a different sound and asks if it is the earth that is there. The voice answers that it is not, since in fact, it is death. Sometime later, late at night, Elatus is reading a letter as she was summoned to attend the next council of pyromancers. At that moment, the MC appears, coming out of the cave, and she is happy to see him well, since he probably succeeded. Ian answers yes, and explains that he properly learned shadow magic from the darkness. However, she is startled and cannot believe that the voice he heard, which was shy and reserved, was actually darkness. This makes her fall silent, and the MC asks if everything is all right. She says it is time to descend the mountain, and he simply wants to know where they will go now. Elatus says that is not what she meant, since in fact, this is where they will need to part ways. She tells him to go to Chronoleak to participate in the Council of Spacetime Mages, because if he is destined to learn spacetime magic, he will definitely find a mage there. The MC does not understand what the hell she means by all of this, and she starts laughing while running her hand through his hair. After all, she can conclude that Ian has an innate affinity with mystery, and if her intuition is correct, he will eventually be able to command time itself. That said, she says goodbye and tells him they will meet again in 3 years in the city of Dranheim. With that, morning arrives, and the city is bustling, with several merchants announcing their products. The MC starts walking through the streets, imagining that he needs to find the so-called Council of Spacetime Mages, but admits that it was too sudden, even coming from his master. At that moment, a man shouts, wanting to know if anyone is going north, as he is looking for travel companions. He reflects that, as far as he knows, that council will also be held in the north, and since he has nothing else to do, the only option is to go take a look. The whole group camps along the way, and the old man asks the MC if this is his first time traveling north. He answers yes, since some business came up suddenly. Leek comments that, if that is the case, he probably does not know about Dragon Mountain. He explains that real dragons appeared on that mountain and are extremely powerful. That said, he asks if he is good at fighting or dodging. Ian answers that he is not very good at either of the two. Leek finds that sad and asks what his job is. The MC does not really know what to say and answers that, actually, he is a mage. The old man stands up, startled, and asks if that is true. A nearby girl observes the commotion, and 2 of the guards are also surprised to see that there is a mage there. Ian does not really understand and asks if there is any problem and what that tension in the air is all about. Leek answers that there is no problem at all and even offers to get a second portion of food for the boy. Ian says there is no need, but the old man goes anyway. Part of the group starts laughing, thinking it is impossible for someone so weak-looking to be a mage, and they believe that if he really is a mage, then any stray dog can be one too. At that moment, the girl goes up to him and comments that if he really is a mage, he should put the soldiers in their place so they do not disrespect him again. He asks why he would do that, and she answers that mercenaries will look down on anyone who seems quiet, and, for that reason, he needs to show power to scare them. That way the guys will protect him no matter what happens. Ian thinks about this, and reflects that he does not really know what to do, since he has never been the type to get angry before. However, a guy spits on Ian's plate and starts cleaning it with that spit. This makes him extremely furious, since he cannot believe such an absurd thing. At that moment, the guy starts shouting, asking if there is an earthquake happening, but when he looks forward, he sees the MC with a terrifying expression, wanting to know why the hell he spat on his plate. The man does not know what to answer and kneels, apologizing, since he was only trying to polish the plate. Ian finds this absurd and tells him to use water if he wants to do that. The guy answers that the water is filthy and full of lime, mud, and parasites, and that one cannot wash dishes in a place like that because it is more disgusting than saliva. The MC is shocked to hear this, and the mercenaries ask if everything is all right, since he froze out of nowhere. But to him, medieval hygiene standards are simply absurd. He recites a spell, and the campfire starts burning, becoming more and more intense. The guards ask what that is, and the MC tells them to go get water immediately. Everyone runs as if there were no tomorrow, since they do not understand why a boy suddenly became furious out of nowhere. Sometime later, already very late at night, the mercenaries walk a little, asking if Kathy really went that way. The soldier gets excited, since the girl is a cutie, and this time, he will try to win her over. However, they spot something, and the moment they were about to shout for her, they find something strange, since the girl is unconscious on a guy's shoulder. They immediately shout, wanting to know who they are, but one of them takes an arrow to the chest and falls to the ground, already dead. Because of this, all the others advance without any fear. Amid this noise, the girl wakes up and immediately bites the guy's arm, making him drop her to the ground. She feels that she has no strength, but even so, she tries to run away while the group shouts to capture the target. Meanwhile, the MC is sleeping peacefully, but he cannot stop having nightmares about that saliva. At that moment, a voice passes through his head, warning that the humans are coming, and he wakes up startled. He tries to understand what presence that is, until the merchant appears in his tent, shouting that they are in trouble. Outside, the battle continues frenetically among the mercenaries, and many are defeated with ease. The kidnapper warns that he does not care how many will die, since he only wants them to find the girl. She remains hidden behind a nearby tree and starts to panic, not knowing what to do. At that moment, a sword appears pointed at her, and the kidnapper says that he finally found where she was hiding and tells her to get up right away. Otherwise, he will rip off both of her arms. Kathy starts crying, imagining that this is the end for her. The guy prepares to attack, but is thrown far away like a soccer ball. The one responsible was Ian, who, as he approaches, grabs her arm and tells her to stay close, since everything will be all right. She becomes thoughtful about whether that is true, and everyone forms a line, following the MC with every step. The old man says they are ready, and the MC prepares himself and uses his darkness skill. A black sphere forms in his hand, and a curtain of smoke begins to spread across the entire battlefield, making the mercenaries unable to see anything. Ian takes the opportunity to leave with the group, and his night vision skill is activated, granting him vision in total darkness. Although the darkness is sinister, one of the kidnappers gets close to them with a lit torch and, without hesitation, prepares to attack. Leek begs for mercy, but the MC activates his scorching fire in time, causing the guy to catch fire like a living torch. The guy falls lifeless to the ground, and the other kidnappers begin to worry. Ian thinks this is great because his goal is to scare them. However, a swordsman charges forward anyway, but halfway there, a dragon appears and devours his body as if it were a feast, leaving everyone terrified, including the MC, since he never imagined they would run into a dragon. The kidnappers remain paralyzed for a moment, but soon begin running to save themselves. Meanwhile, the merchants group cannot move because of how scared they are. The MC knows the situation is bad, and, facing such a huge dragon, believes he will die if things continue like this. At that moment, the system notifies him that he has witnessed a primordial mystery. He does not understand what that means, or whether the dragon is perhaps a summon. Only after thinking for a while does he conclude that perhaps the dragon is also a mystery, just like when he heard the voices in the air, water, and snow. Even while trembling, he decides to try something and calls the dragon Drake. The people do not understand why he said that, and to make things worse, the dragon roars even louder. He tries to calm himself, since he knows he can do it. After all, the mysteries have never disappointed him before. With that in mind, he gathers his courage and shouts that he is his friend, and friends do not hurt each other. The dragon makes a sound, and one of the guys asks what the beast could be saying, but the old man tells him to shut up, since the team's mage must know what he is doing. Ian remains indifferent, but inside, he is panicking, since he no longer knows what he is doing. The system appears, saying that there are points available to level up a skill. He knows that, in that situation, it is better to put all the points into summoning, and he does so without hesitation. After the skill is increased, he finally manages to hear the dragon say something, and because of that, he asks once again what he said. Drake, being extremely large, answers by shouting that he will listen to what he has to say. Ian finds this incredible and says that he has no intention of fighting. The dragon responds that it is absurd for a mere human to fight against him. The MC agrees, since he would obviously lose, because someone so grand would not benefit from wasting time on mere creatures. Drake asks if, by any chance, they are begging for their lives. Meanwhile, the people wonder whether Ian is communicating through telepathy or something like that. In the end, the dragon agrees, since killing mere insects would be a boring task. The MC feels relieved because it worked, but he becomes desperate when the dragon starts shouting again that he is in a bad mood at that exact moment. Everyone panics, imagining that this is the end, and the MC also becomes worried, since he no longer knows what he can do. From what he understands, he is basically being ordered around, and he does not see much choice other than facing this giant head-on. With that in mind, he asks why he is in such a bad mood. Drake becomes indignant and asks why the hell he should tell anything to a mere human. Ian answers that he simply imagined he might be able to help with something. This only makes the dragon even angrier, since he finds it outrageous that an arrogant brat would think he could do anything about it. He recites some spell, and a strong wind begins to arise from several directions. This also catches the dragon's attention, since Ian becomes surrounded by several mysteries. Drake admits that he finds this quite interesting, and the MC says that he is nothing more than a humble mage seeking various mysteries, and that is why he wishes to offer a little help. After saying that, he imagines that the negotiations can now begin. Time passes during that long night, and he realizes that at least the monster's bloodlust has disappeared. This relieves him, since at least it seems like he is out of immediate danger. But he cannot relax, since he needs to show what he can do, because such an imposing creature must not have many needs, and he also cannot make any strange demand. Only then does a memory pass through his mind. His former master said that one cannot use magic without communicating with the mysteries, and this is because the relationship built with them is vital. Whether as friends or subordinates, each mystery is different, so it is essential for a mage to understand their feelings. He finally understands what that means, since the most important thing for a mage is social wisdom, and that is why he will try to lead the dragon through conversation. The first thing he does is call his system, since it is multi-purpose, and he is soon surprised, since the first notification is about how to master the summoning arts through Demonite. He realizes that this is exactly what he was looking for and decides to see what it is about. First, he must give them an incredibly good drink. The larger the body, the stronger the drink must be. Only then does the next step come, which is to flatter them as if there were no tomorrow. The MC does not understand what kind of advice that is, or whether it is some kind of joke. This leaves him depressed, since he would not be able to do something like that. But he quickly pulls himself together, since he needs to win over the dragon first. And this is the only way to find an opening. He calls out to the dragon and says that he has prepared a gift. Drake becomes curious and tells him to bring this so-called gift. With that response, Ian calls for Leek and shouts for him to quickly bring the strongest drink they have in the carriage. He immediately obeys and returns with the best drinks he has. The dragon says he found the gift quite pathetic, since the bottles are far too small. Ian knows that, in the human world, the smaller the quantity, the more expensive the product is. So, confidently, he fills a glass and hands over the drink. The dragon notices that it has a horrible smell and, with a frightening expression, asks if he is plotting something. He answers that he obviously is not and says he will drink a little to demonstrate. Having said that, he takes a huge gulp of that alcohol, and, although inside he thinks it is horrible, since he is not even old enough to drink, he comments that it is delicious. The dragon is still hesitant, since the smell seems very strong despite its good appearance, and the MC asks him to please try it, since he is sure it will be to his liking. The monster takes that tiny glass in his paw and lightly places his tongue on it to taste it. Everyone begins to pray, since their lives depend on it, and soon the monster makes a pleased face. Ian asks how it is, and he answers that it is not exactly delicious, but for some reason, he finds it addictive. The MC sees an opportunity there, and charismatically, asks him to try the other drinks. The dragon agrees, and after a good while drinking, he appears drunk like an alcoholic, admitting that he found this thing called alcohol very good. The MC feels relieved that it worked in a way, but he cannot believe that he has already drunk 7 barrels and still has not passed out, and he concludes that this dragon is definitely incredible. He decides to drink a little too, even though there is no alcohol left in the wagon, until he gets startled when the dragon comments that he had asked why he was in a bad mood. Ian starts to imagine that the dragon suddenly became sentimental, and Drake says that his nest is in a bad place and is smaller than the others. Even so, his partner said it was cozy. The MC can hardly believe that this monster really had a girlfriend. He continues saying that, without him knowing, everyone started mocking her because of a guy like him, and since he felt so guilty, he lets out a strong roar, saying that he had to break up with his partner. The people wake up from that loud roar, and seeing that it is getting more and more intense, practically faint from that terror. The MC reflects that dragons' feelings are the same as humans, and thinks this could work out if he plays his cards right. He calls out to the dragon and says he can use his magic to fix the nest. Drake asks if he is serious. He answers that he is, but says he wants a small favor in return. After all that, the day dawns, and the MC notices that everyone is sleeping peacefully. He touches the old man's head and the old man starts giving little kisses, which only makes him even more irritated, to the point of shouting that he will rip his fingers off. Leek finally wakes up and sees Ian with a bizarre expression. This terrifies him, and everyone is thrown out of the wagon. They do not understand what is going on and ask what happened, since they only remember the dragon letting out a roar. The MC answers that everyone simply passed out. Kathy asks if, by any chance, the dragon just left. He says no, since, in truth, it is just waiting for them. The three despair once again, since that means the dragon is waiting to devour them. Ian says no and explains that, in truth, he made a deal to save their lives, and now the dragon is waiting. The girl finds this idea of a deal strange. Meanwhile, the two fools find a sacrifice for them admirable. The MC finds these guys more and more unnecessary. That is because he made a deal with the dragon, since he would fix the nest in exchange for letting everyone leave. They start singing a song in Ian's name, which startles him, leaving him unable to understand what is going on. The song begins with everyone's soul, and that was when a powerful dragon appeared, letting out a strong roar. However, the MC scolds him and finally puts the monster on its knees on the ground. That is the song they all sang with emotion. In addition, they state that from that moment on, they will be one in body and soul with the great mage, whom they will protect with their own lives. The MC does not understand what the hell these guys are talking about and warns them to get ready to leave and not to follow him. They tell him not to worry, since now they are two halves of the same soul. The old man asks them to get ready to do the countdown, and Kathy, seeing their distraction, takes the chance to leave. Sometime later, Ian finally arrives at the dragon's nest. He looks surprised, but the dragon shouts that he should not give up. Since he has a suspicious look, he tells him not to worry, since he is not giving up, and all he is thinking is that he is exhausted, and using Maronius is taking its toll, because his stamina is at rock bottom. He asks to finish it quickly, since he wants to rest, and believes that if he pushes the sharp rocks and straightens the walls, it will become quite spacious. He starts concentrating and recites his power of earth. The mysteries of that element appear, and Ian explains that he has a favor to ask. However, the voice says it is not interested since it is busy. The MC gets worried since apparently that mystery really hates him. The dragon asks how it went. He explains that the earth refused to talk and that he will have to ask again when it is in a good mood. But deep down, he knows that the earth will probably only get angry again. However, the dragon says there is no problem, since if the earth is rejecting it, there is nothing to be done, and says that apparently it is a great being with no solution, but thanks him anyway for trying to help someone like him. The MC is surprised hearing those words, since the dragon seems like a completely different being. The monster asks his name and reveals that his own name is Drake Longtail, asking them to be friends. Ian accepts right away, and the two finally become friends. With that, a new skill is acquired, dragon summoning. Ask a dragon friend for help, and he will promptly answer your call. He is happy to have obtained this skill, but at the same time, he feels bad for not being able to do anything in return. Drake calls his attention and, showing a huge pile of treasure, asks him to take as much as he wants to celebrate their friendship. The MC finally discovers that his master was right, since dragons really do have a weakness for collecting jewels. This only serves to make him feel even worse, because if the earth saw those jewels, it would probably hear his request in the blink of an eye. This gives him an idea, and he asks the dragon if, by any chance, he could put a little greed into that treasure. Drake does not quite understand what he means by that. The MC makes all the preparations and thinks that he almost forgot the method his master taught him, since if a mystery is stubborn, he only has to offer a gift through a magic circle. They keep watching what will come next, and once again, he calls upon the earth. The mystery asks if he is going to summon it. Ian laughs and answers that he does not go around summoning just anything. The jewel starts shining intensely and spreads throughout the entire magic circle, even breaking the walls. Drake protects himself from that light until he looks straight ahead, since his nest has reached a completely different level. This makes him extremely proud, and he admits that it smells very good. He asks Ian if, by any chance, he also uses magic to give it that smell, but before getting an answer, he thanks him for this help, since now he will never have to feel ashamed beside his partner again, nor will he have to worry anymore after they have children. The MC does not like so many details and simply says he is glad he liked it. However, he starts feeling dizzy and his head starts spinning. The dragon gets worried and asks if he is okay since he is bleeding. Ian cannot answer and falls unconscious to the ground. The dragon panics, asking Ian to wake up and no longer knows what he should do. Suddenly, someone shouts, calling for the MC. It was Kathy, running like crazy. The dragon looks at her without understanding anything and makes a bizarre face, like someone who is not in the mood to talk. She asks him, please, to listen and explains that she is Ian's friend, so he cannot eat her. Her hand signals are terrible, but in the end, the dragon tried to understand. The MC makes some noises, despite not waking up. Sometime later, already at night, he continues sleeping peacefully and with his hand tries to grab his phone to see what time it is. He holds Kathy's hand and starts wondering why it is so soft and whether, by any chance, it has turned into a gummy candy or something like that. He keeps rubbing it, thinking it is very cute, until he gets startled when he hears someone asking if he has woken up. He finally realizes he is sleeping on Kathy's lap and gets up in shock, questioning what he is doing in that place and whether, by any chance, he is still dreaming. She asks him to lie down a little longer, since he seems confused. He lets out a groan, and this leaves Kathy worried, because he should not have sat up so quickly. Ian feels a strong headache and remembers that he passed out. Basically, he tried to talk to the dragon, had a nosebleed, and forced the level of his summoning arts to rise. His biggest concern is whether, by any chance, Kathy saw him going through all of that, and he finds the situation far too embarrassing. In the end, he asks where the dragon is, and she says that he simply left without warning. The MC considers that maybe Drake went back to his female. Either way, he apologizes for the trouble, and she tells him not to worry about it. Ian, curious, asks how the hell she managed to enter the cave, since he cannot imagine the dragon simply letting her pass. She answers that she just said she was a friend of his, but that leaves him even more confused, since there would be no way to communicate with a monster, and he wonders whether she actually used automatic translation or something like that. She reveals that, in truth, she managed to do it while knowing the risks, because there is something important she wanted to ask. He asks what it is, and Kathy reveals that the attack last night happened because of her, and apologizes for dragging him into it. Ian sees that the mood suddenly became heavy, and realizes that this is the reason she trembled so much the other day. Either way, he asks if that is the reason she was accompanied by those bandits, but she answers that she obviously is not part of that group and is not a bandit either, and, even though it was supposed to be a secret, she will have to tell him, starting with the fact that her name is not Kathy, and reveals that she is actually the princess of that kingdom. The MC is surprised and wonders whether, by any chance, he is still dreaming. She explains that her real name is Lucy, from the Italian family, and that the bandits who tried to kidnap her were sent by her fiancé. Ian becomes even more curious about all of this, and wonders whether, by any chance, it is some kind of lover's quarrel. She answers that obviously not, and that, in truth, she was planning to go even farther away so that he would never be able to find her. But after what happened last night, she lost confidence and ran away alone. She takes his hand and asks him, please, to help her escape. Ian asks her to wait a second and questions the real reason she is running away and whether, by any chance, her fiancé did something. She explains that the Italian family is a barony that governs the region, but since they lacked knights to serve them, they were constantly threatened by external enemies. At that rate, a territorial war would have destroyed her house. In the end, her family promised her to a knight who was a former mercenary captain. He led the most powerful mercenary group of that time, and with that person, the threats finally stopped. At first, everything seemed very good, and he was always smiling and pleased with the position of male heir. She was also happy with it. However, eventually, he began abusing his status to seize power. He started going out with other women and treated her with nothing but contempt. In the end, her parents could no longer remain silent and demanded that the engagement be broken off. She begins to tremble while telling this story and finishes by saying that the bastard ended up poisoning her parents. Ian thinks this is absurd, and Lucy, crying a lot, says that the guy poisoned them to keep them quiet, because he knew he would lose his power if the engagement were cancelled. Ian thinks this is awful since the guy is definitely a piece of trash. She explains that no matter how much her fiancé swings a sword, if he did not marry her, he would remain nothing more than a commoner and would not be able to inherit the Italian name or her parents' fortune. That is why she ran away with the help of some servants, because she would rather die than marry that man. She knows that he will continue this pursuit to guarantee the marriage, and for that reason, she asks once again, please, for him to help her escape safely. The MC realizes that the situation is delicate because he understands how hard it is to deal with this alone, and poisoning his own in-laws just for power is absurd, and now she is being hunted by her own fiancé. He concludes that, in the end, he will never understand how medieval nobles think. Lucy begs once again for the honor of the Italian family and guarantees that she will make it worth his while. He asks why he was chosen, and what if, by any chance, he decides to betray her. She shouts that her fiancé is a cheapskate and would only give a few silver coins for her head. But, on the other hand, she guarantees that she herself could give everything. Ian questions what she means by that. Lucy answers that she could give him the entire Italian house. A silence hangs in the air, and the MC imagines that this means she could even marry him. It would be the son of a peasant becoming a sacred knight, and that is a gigantic opportunity. But if that happens, he will become Ivan Elatus Raven, and he thinks that living as a hero is kind of cool. But he was reborn in a fantasy world, and all he should do is master magic. So, he believes that helping her could give him experience as a mage, that he could even earn some money for the journey, and that he will just drive away the pursuers, while the rest can be handled along the way. After thinking all of that, he tells her to ask a swordsman for that kind of help, since mages, in truth, are not exactly frontline warriors. She, crying, says she understands. However, Ian says that if he is paid, the story changes, and then he can help her escape. She sees a light at the end of the tunnel and starts crying even more. The MC questions why she suddenly started crying, and whether, by any chance, he said something wrong, since he only said he would help. Lucy grabs his hand and thanks him from the bottom of her heart, while also leaning against his chest to cry. He realizes that her situation is worse than he imagined, but is glad that he can help in some way. Meanwhile, somewhere else, under a scorching sun, Drake is enjoying the breeze with the greatest happiness in the world, until he looks to the side and sees that Ian has finally woken up. He asks how he is feeling, and the MC says he is fine, despite everything. Then he says he will go down the mountain because the others are waiting, but thanks him for the gifts he received. The dragon says it was nothing, and even offers to give him a ride to the place. He thanks him for the help, and Lucy keeps trying to understand what is going on. The dragon shouts for the princess to climb on too, but she only gets scared because she understands nothing but powerful roars. Ian tells him not to be rude, and she explains that she has no idea what they are talking about. Either way, he extends his hand and asks her to climb onto the dragon's back. She does so, and the dragon says that he will depart. First, he gains momentum and flies into the open sky. In another location, the merchants say they need to leave immediately, since the mercenaries who were with them were annihilated. Jason says that if more bandits are nearby, everyone will die. Mark knows that, but says they at least need to settle things properly. The two do not reach an agreement, since they want to flee from the bandits, but still need to worry about the dragons. They turn to Master Leek, since they want to know his opinion. The old man remains silent for a moment, opens his eyes, and replies that they should wait for the MC. Jason thinks this is ridiculous, but Mark thinks it is a good idea. After all, they should follow the master's orders. Leek is aware that Ian is someone who defeated a dragon and is definitely not dead. He just had some problem that delayed him. 10 minutes earlier, they are held captive since they were attacked by bandits. The leader orders them to stop whining and guarantees that he will finish them off if they keep going like that. They order them to hand over the woman immediately. Leek asks what woman he is talking about, and the one-eyed man tells him not to play dumb, since he is referring to the beautiful woman with bluish-black hair who was with them. The group thinks about what he could be talking about and comes to the conclusion that they are referring to Kathy. They look back, but realize that the girl simply is no longer with them. The bandit realizes that the three of them are nothing but useless, and they panic, begging for help. A tremor happens at that very moment, and the bandits question what it could be. The merchants cry tears of joy since they are finally safe, because the dragon is appearing, running in their direction, and on its back is the MC along with Lucy. The bandit realizes that the woman they are looking for is the one on the dragon, but they ask if they are seeing it right, since she is riding a fucking colossal dragon. The bandit cannot believe such an absurd thing and orders everyone to flee immediately. Leek says he is happy to see that Lucy was with the MC, since otherwise the bastards would have done something terrible to her. Jason, curious, asks how the men knew about her. Mark agrees, since they were looking specifically for her and must be fellow followers of the Church of the Celestial God. And if so, that is sick. The MC thinks about the Church of the Celestial God, since it had been a long time since he had heard that name. The dominant religion in this world is the Church of the Celestial God. Their doctrine forbids enslaving fellow believers, but traffickers and slave traders abandoned that commandment long ago, and he knows that even after seeing a mage and a dragon, they probably will not give up on her. He thinks the persistence of these guys is insane and wonders if her fiancé is really that desperate for this marriage. He knows this is bad because at this rate, they will eventually catch her, and he is afraid. Because of that, he asks Drake if he could ask him for a favor. The dragon replies yes, and he asks him to scare off the bandits, even killing them if necessary. Drake replies that if that is his wish, then he will gladly do it and runs off after the bandits. Ian reflects that obviously he does not want to order anyone's death, but in this medieval fantasy world, where killing is a daily occurrence, if he wants to survive, he will also have to change. At this instant, another pain strikes his head, and he wonders if he overused the powers of the god Moronius again. Lucy notices this and tries to understand what is happening, but Ian assures her that he is fine. She clings to his arm, since she does not really believe that, and the old man immediately notices that there is a mood forming in the air and says that the two of them seem very close. Sometime later, they resume their journey, and the MC hears a sound. It was his system notifying him that his dragon had eliminated a human. He notices that 11 have already been eliminated and finds it convenient that the summoning arts give him automatic reports, although he thinks it is a shame he cannot summon him right in front of him. At this moment, the dragon calls him through telepathy and says that he has already scared off all the humans in sight. The MC thanks him, since it was definitely a great help. Drake says it is not a problem because he is happy to be able to help a friend and asks if he is already leaving. He replies yes, although it is hard to say goodbye. He is aware that Drake cannot leave the mountains, and it is a shame that he cannot see him one last time. The dragon thanks him for everything, and so does Ian. But before leaving, Drake asks if he is interested in the remains of a phoenix's nest. Sometime later, Ian arrives in Riverville and keeps thinking about that phoenix. That is because the dragon told him that rumors say an ice phoenix lives in the northern mountains, and that he could go see it himself. The phoenix is a bird of infinite blue. Its feathers are coated in ice, freezing everything they touch. The ice phoenix has inhabited these peaks since ancient times, and is known as one of the highest-ranking magical beasts in the Storm Mountains. He wonders if he could make a phoenix his summon. At this instant, the trio calls out to him, and the merchant says they are leaving to meet the Lord of the Fief, and, because of that, want to know if he would like to accompany them. Ian assumes that, for Lucy to escape safely, it is probably better that she does not draw the attention of high-ranking nobles. Jason calls out to Kathy, since he does not know her real name yet, and asks her to accompany them too. She does not quite know what to say, and only then does Ian hug her and say that they will rest at an inn before leaving. The group becomes extremely embarrassed by such intimacy, and she also feels embarrassed, but says she agrees, since she is a little tired. Leek watches from afar, and is happy for correctly assuming that the two of them are actually together. After everyone leaves, Lucy comments that, in fact, pretending to be his girlfriend makes things easier, since it keeps the idiots away. He wonders if that is really the case, especially because he is nothing more than a commoner who is the son of a farmer. So he still has all the speech of someone from the countryside. She says that, in truth, he is currently a mage, but the MC asks her not to pay too much attention to his thoughts, since he is just imitating his master, and asks what her plans will be from that moment onward. She replies that for now, she just wants to see Count Katina, since he is an uncle of hers on her mother's side, and if she explains the situation, he should give her some help. The MC wonders if perhaps her mother was close to the Count, but she, embarrassed, says that, in truth, they simply did not get along badly. Ian gets worried, since if she is not sure they were close, this becomes a little risky, and, curious, asks if she does not have anyone else she can trust besides her uncle. Lucy does not like this at all, since he is doubting the Count, because there is no one in this world more trustworthy than him. The MC says that it is fine, since if she trusts him that much, then he must be a good man. She says that her uncle is better than a complete stranger, since anyone else would only try to marry her for her status. But she drops a hint, saying that if a grand mage like him happened to propose, the story would be different. Ian realizes that she has already started talking nonsense and warns that their contract ends as soon as they find the Count. She thinks he is being a little cold. After all, a noblewoman is offering marriage. The MC replies that there are many other women in the world, and that only makes the girl even angrier and jealous. Because of that, she leaves irritated, saying that he is the worst. Sometime later, the two arrive at an inn, and Ian says he wants to stay for a few nights, and that they will also need to take a bath. He hands over a bag of money, thinking it will be enough, and the receptionist replies that it is more than enough, and that she will even prepare the room immediately. Then she points at Lucy, asking if she will also take a bath. She becomes extremely embarrassed, and says she is fine the way she is. The MC, not understanding anything, asks if, by any chance, she also thinks the water is dirty. Lucy does not know where to hide her face since, apparently, she needs to spell it out for someone as dense as him. Ian still does not understand anything, and after the explanation of how bathing works in the hot cauldron, he realizes that the characteristics of medieval baths have zero privacy. He finally realizes why she is so restless and immediately says to prepare only one bath. Lucy takes off her hood again, and this catches the attention of all the young men in the inn because of her beauty. The MC realizes she is drawing too much attention and tells her to put the hood back on. She does not understand why, and he approaches, asking her to do it quickly because everyone is staring. Lucy finds this irritating, but the guys really do not stop eyeing her. At dusk, still at the inn, the guys comment on whether they saw the girl from earlier, since it is the first time they have seen such a beautiful young woman, and they think it is pathetic that she is accompanied by a weak and scrawny guy. They wonder if, by any chance, they should take her to have a little fun, and since they did not seem to be planning to stay at the inn for long, they decide that they will grab her at that exact moment. After that, at the Lord's castle, the Baron tells them to work hard, guaranteeing that he will not cause trouble. Leek thanks him for that, and, from what he heard, if he wins the Baron's favor, he might be able to get a place to stay in that castle. Only then does he get the idea to mention the MC and says he has something he would like to tell him. Kartz asks what it is, and the old man explains that it is actually a secret, but since he admires the Lord so much and could not keep it to himself anymore, he decided to tell him. The Baron finds this feeling admirable and becomes even more intrigued. Leek explains that they actually met a mage during their travels and starts explaining all the events that occurred during the journey with the MC. Basically, it was a summarized version of how Ian tamed a dragon. However, even after telling all that, he says it is too early to be impressed. That is because the MC is currently staying at an inn in that city. The Baron is startled and asks if that is true. That is bad, because if an unpredictable mage loses his patience, he could even release the dragon in the city, and that would be total chaos without precedent. He knows things can still get worse because, at that moment, inside the city, there is already a group of lunatics, the Knights of Santiago. They are driven by devotion to serving God, take up their weapons like monks and martial artists, and scour the land in search of demons and monsters instead of fighting in wars. Basically, they are self-proclaimed protectors of humanity. So, if the Order of the Knights of Santiago crosses paths with a dragon-taming mage, he panics just thinking about it, and because of that, he calls for his butler, who immediately appears to attend him. He tells him to prepare a room for Leek and then to summon the Knights of Santiago without delay. After all, he decided it would be easier to talk to the knights than to a lunatic mage. Meanwhile, at the inn, the MC continues eating with Lucy, and one of the guests asks the attendant if the food is ever going to be ready. She says she will prepare it immediately, but she is upset because she has not even managed to fill the bathtub yet. Ian hears this and says he will take care of it, since he is the one who needs to take the bath. She says it is fine, even though she does not want to interrupt his meal. The MC tells Lucy to go up to the room as soon as she finishes eating. She continues tasting her meal, and the guys are already obsessively watching her. After the meal, Lucy goes up toward the room and continues walking alone. At that moment, a guy grabs her arm and asks if, by any chance, she is the companion of a black-haired knight who left. She gets scared since she has no idea who the guy is. He explains that he is just a messenger for the MC and shows that he was hired to take her to the docks immediately. Lucy is suspicious of this, since Ian should be taking a bath, and he tries to convince her by saying that something happened and that he had to use the bath in the courtyard. She panics, wondering if, by any chance, the bandits from before followed them to the city, and the guy begs her to hurry because there is not much time. She says it is fine and starts following him. After they arrive outside, she notices something strange and sees that Ian is there, but not in the place she was told. At that instant, the guy appears behind her, ready to capture her. But before that happens, she lets out a loud scream that catches the MC's attention. He looks back, since he knows that voice belongs to Lucy, and at that instant, another guy appears and attacks him. However, he dodges as if it were nothing, and the lunatic, all clumsy, trips over his own foot and falls like a dazed cockroach. He believes these guys were not sent by Lucy's fiancé. More men appear carrying a sack, and the MC knows something is wrong. But before he can do anything, a guy appears blocking the way. He thinks this is a pain. A gust of wind begins to appear in the area, and the guy tries to understand what the hell it is. Ian knows that, with his current power, he cannot use magic exactly the way he wants. And in this case, among the mysteries that could help, he will have to find one that can do it. A voice appears saying that the light of humans is fading, and that it is the perfect time for a little fun. He knows that this voice belongs to darkness, and because of that, he uses his ability corresponding to the mystery. The guy gets scared since he cannot see anything, and the MC hits him with a piece of wood. He tells the defeated man that when he casts this shadow art, he will not be able to see anyone other than himself. More people begin to approach, and Ian realizes they called reinforcements. Because of that, he dissipates the black mist and tells him to answer quickly where they took the girl. The guy celebrates since he can see again, but gets hit on the head again because he is not answering what was asked. At that moment, something passes beside his head, and he realizes it was a dagger. A group approaches, telling them to stop, and asks if the darkness was his. This is the group of Holy Knights of Santiago. The MC says it was the mage who summoned the darkness they witnessed. The old man stays quiet for a moment, and Ian realizes that this guy's bloodlust is insane and has no idea who he is. The guy on the ground starts begging to be saved and shouts that the crazy mage tried to kill him for no reason at all. The MC becomes even more furious at this nonsense, and the old man says he understands and that if it was indeed done by a mage, then it becomes completely possible. Ian does not understand what he means by completely possible. The old man replies that mages are like that. They are beings who do whatever they want. Ian becomes furious at this absurdity and has no idea what the hell these guys think about mages. Because of that, he shouts, saying that the son of a bitch attacked him first, and that, obviously, he would not attack someone for no reason at all. The atmosphere becomes heavy because of that shout, and he thinks it sucks that he lost his temper and raised his voice, because things are going to get worse. However, Elder bursts out laughing and says the boy really does have a sharp tongue, and that means he has plenty of personality for a mage. He gets confused by this since, apparently, the common sense of this world is that having a foul mouth is proof of being skilled. However, one of the warriors warns that this does not mean he can use evil magic. Ian does not understand what he means by evil magic. The man emphasizes that the black mist is unacceptable, as it is an act of turning one's back on the sun, the eye of the heavens. In short, hiding in darkness is an act of cowardice. The MC tries to understand their logic that darkness is cowardly because it rejects the sun. They are using religious metaphors, and because of that, he concludes that they must be followers of the church. He carefully thinks about what he is going to say and asks whether, by any chance, the law of heaven is not that day and night coexist. If the will of heaven resides in light, then he wants to know why night even exists. The man does not really know how to answer, and the MC starts shouting that the sun creates light, just as the absence of light creates darkness, and the two coexist. And what created it was simply the power of the great mystery, so he wants to know what the hell is wrong with that. Once again, the man is left speechless, just like everyone else. They stop to reflect and say that, in fact, it is true since, without the permission of light, he would not be able to conjure darkness under the sun, and that is also the will of the heavens. Ian cannot believe these lunatics, since they are medieval fanatics, and, unrelatedly, asks if he can leave, since his sister was kidnapped and he needs to go get her. The old man looks at the bandit and asks whether, by any chance, he attacked that guy because he was a kidnapper. Ian answers that he did, and the lunatic realizes he is screwed and tries to disguise it at all costs. The old man orders his group to keep an eye on the guy and goes to apologize to Ian since he took up his precious time. However, he offers his help as an apology. The afternoon goes by, and the kidnappers prepare to escape by boat until the MC appears running. They point out that this is the place the lunatic mentioned and become furious since the kidnappers escape by boat, and they think they are a bunch of cowards. Ian knows that moving by boat is extremely dangerous at sunset and gets startled when the old man shouts to everyone and says that, for the sake of a single person, they will all cross together in the middle of the darkness, and everyone shouts that they will do it in the name of the Knights of Santiago. The MC finally realizes that the group is indeed an order of knights, but mentions that it is dangerous for them to get on a boat. The old man tells him not to worry, since they are very strong. Ian warns that he found a hook earlier and will pull the boat, then asks them, please, to attach the hook when it gets close. Elder is startled upon hearing that he will pull a boat and asks how he will use a water art when he saw him using shadow arts. The MC reveals that he completed the introductory levels of several different schools. The old man finds this strange, since all the mages he saw on the battlefield used only one type of magic, and from what he understood, the MC completed several different levels, which would not be normal. Ian prepares himself and recites his water magic, which begins to open a path, splitting the waters. The old man is surprised, since what he is witnessing goes far beyond the water arts he saw on the battlefield. The kidnappers notice that the water is moving, and, when they look back, they are startled because a tsunami is about to hit them. With everything resolved, the boat returns to the shore, and the knights capture the kidnappers. At that moment, Lucy runs to the MC, completely terrified. The old man, seeing this atmosphere, asks what he is doing, since his sister started crying. He gets irritated by this, but tells her not to worry, that everything will be fine. She thanks him for everything, and Ian realizes he made it just in time, because he ran out of energy and definitely needs to return to the inn to take a bath. However, in the city, several knights arrive, and everyone must return to their lodgings, because Bernard, the eldest son of the Lord, was present. In short, the MC was about to discover that, in that world, taking a peaceful bath is a luxury that is never allowed. The knight notices the smoke and already believes that there was definitely a battle. He imagines that the tremors the Lord predicted really did come true and thinks this is bad, since it was already a headache to have to drag the spoiled young master along. He sighs, worried about this outcome. Meanwhile, the MC tries to take a bath, and the group of Knights of Santiago insists on helping wash his back. At that moment, Bernard appears running, asking what happened, and the MC answers that the smoke is from his bath. The two cannot believe they ran because of a bath, and find something like that outdoors strange, since the citizens of the Empire rarely bathe unless it is a special occasion. Besides that, the surroundings are completely destroyed, and because of that, they conclude that there is more going on. And since he is the eldest son of the Lord, he wants to be fully informed, so he orders them to give detailed explanations. Elder calls out to the young master to explain the situation, and the boy asks why he is speaking, since the question was for the MC. The old man tries to explain that Ian is actually a mage and is already certain about what the boy is going to do about it. Bernard slaps his hand on his emblem, saying that he is heir to the royal family, and because of that, orders him to get out of the bath to pay the proper respects. In that world, the nobility has a cultural tradition known as mage provocation. Simply put, it is a custom in which nobles provoke mages to test their power. However, a mage who endures the provocation in silence is considered weak, while a mage who reacts with anger is recognized as truly powerful. Ian thinks about all of this, since what his master once talked about may be happening. The boy gets furious at such an absurdity and asks who he thinks he is to challenge him. The MC says he has no reason at all to obey a stranger. The young master becomes increasingly furious, going so far as to order his knight to drag the fake mage out of the bath. Ian believes that all of this is an act and decides to participate as well. He stands up and overflows with all of his power, questioning what he meant by calling him a fake. The boy starts to become terrified of that black aura, and Ian commands the objects to rise, and everything begins to fly around the people. Hansen asks him to stop, since he has perfectly understood his true power, and apologizes for the disrespect. The objects fall to the ground, and the MC believes he has done enough, and that it is probably what is necessary for the brat to back down. However, this only served to make the young master throw a tantrum on the floor, and the MC thinks this is a pain, because with this outcome, he will end up being executed by Baron Karts. The next day, at the castle, the MC is invited by the Baron, and he apologizes for his whiny son causing trouble, since, from what he heard, he caused many problems. Ian says that was not the case, and even apologizes, because he went too far. Karts remembers something and asks whether, by any chance, he did not have a companion. Ian says that she had some matters to take care of and, because of that, stayed at the inn, since she does not need to go through the trouble of showing her face to everyone, and the group of Knights of Santiago offered to take care of her. The Lord says he understands and asks what his master's name is. He answers that her name is Eradisu. The Baron says he has heard of her and believes she headed south, but he is surprised, since, from what he understood, the MC is not going to the Principality of Palgar or the Principality of Roxlan. Ian does not understand what he means by that. The old man explains that things have been a bit tense lately, and, apparently, the Principality of Palgar has its eye on Roxlan. Ian gets worried, since that means there could be a war, but says that, in truth, he is heading east in search of a mystery. Karts says he understands and says that he will also give him a present. He shows a chest and asks him to open it. The MC wonders what it could be and is surprised, since it is a very powerful staff. The old man says it was used by a renowned aeromancer, and that they say it is called Windstep. He takes it in his hand and notices that it suited him very well, and even though it looks like an ordinary staff, it feels more like he got a mage skin. Either way, he gets excited because he has just received a present, and the Baron tells him to consider it a symbol of gratitude for forgiving his son's rudeness. With all matters resolved, he leaves, but as soon as he arrives at the inn, he hears Lucy screaming for him. The MC rushes in and asks what happened. She claims that something terrible happened and that a suspicious crow is inside, saying that it needs him. The knights explain that a hunter caught the animal in the morning and was going to eat it, but the little girl prevented that. She says that one is Ian Eridus Raven and the other is a crow, and this even seems like fate. He simply cannot believe what he is hearing, since he hates being compared to a crow just because he has black hair, and she keeps thinking it is amazing because she did not know that. Either way, Ian apologizes for the confusion his sister caused, tells them to go ahead and eat, and scolds her, since he is the mage, and he does not want to hear that absurdity. The archer thanks him for taking a look and says they will eat the crow together for lunch. However, Ian is startled when he hears a voice begging, please, for someone to help him. He immediately tells them to wait and asks what the animal is. The crow keeps asking him to save him, and while the two keep talking, the rest of the group tries to understand what is going on. He realizes that Moronius does not work, perhaps because it lacks mystery. The crow keeps asking him to save him, and he has already said 1,000 times that he will save him, but even so, the animal keeps being annoying, until Ian becomes extremely irritated and yells at him to shut up, since he has said 1,000,000 times that he will save him. The animal finally stays quiet, and he realizes that, despite not understanding words, it apparently knows how to read the mood. The archer admits he is surprised, since, from what he understood, Ian just talked to a crow. He answers that yes, since the animal was asking to be saved. Lucy brags about this because she said earlier that she was sure the crow was not normal. Elder laughs and says the young lady apparently also sees mysteries like her brother, and the girl brags, since apparently she has talent for magic. The MC no longer pays attention to that and goes to bandage the crow's wing, since he believes that is enough for now. They go to the table, and Lucy is curious about what they will do with the crow and whether they will return him to the hunters. Ian does not like that idea, since the animal will end up becoming food. At that moment, the crow goes to his hand, and with the face of a stray puppy, begs him, please, not to abandon him, since people are far too scary. The MC finds this annoying and places him on his shoulder. Lucy deduces that they will take him with them, and, with Ian's confirmation, she becomes even more excited, wanting at all costs to give him a name, and suggests Obsidian, because his black eyes are beautiful. The MC notices that the crow looks happy and wonders if it is because Lucy is pampering him. However, he thought the name was too long and suggests the name Oberon. She likes it just the same, and so it is officially decided as Oberon. The animal gets excited and tells them to offer their attributes to enjoy his grace. Ian finds this funny, since he suddenly became cheeky and believes this must be happiness. At that moment, Lucy gets his attention and suggests traveling together with the knights, because it would be better than just the two of them together. Ian believes she is right, since bandits will be less trouble if they are with knights, but he worries in case they are not going in the same direction. At that moment, Elder appears and asks what the concern is. Ian explains everything, and the Elder says that, although the boy is a mage, it is still dangerous to travel alone with a woman, and suggests making a deal regarding the monsters that appeared in the Count's territory. That is because, in reality, they are going to hunt a monster that appeared in Count Katina's territory. The MC thinks about it until the old man says it will be the monster Manticora. It is a brutal and infamous magical beast that loves massacring humans. He, worried, asks if by any chance he wants to drag him into helping hunt that beast. Elder answers that no, since they would not drag the two of them into such danger, but says that, if he wanted to help of his own free will, he also would not stop him. The MC quickly realizes what is going on and stands up, saying he is out. The Elder laughs and asks him to let him finish. After all, what he wants to ask is not for him to help with the hunt. In truth, they are an order of knights founded by the church. But when they mentioned that they were going to hunt the Manticora, he heard that the priests in the Count's territory practically forced a mage to help, and he believes that mage must have become very irritated. All he wanted was help calming that mage down, since, coming from another mage, it should have a better effect than coming from knights. Ian realizes it is not a bad deal, since, if it is only to cheer up a grumpy mage in exchange for gaining an escort from an entire order, it is interesting. Seeing the positive side, he tells them they will go together. The journey begins, and traveling with the Knights of Santiago was far too comfortable. All the members were men of character, so the road was quite peaceful. However, if the MC had something to complain about, it would be only one thing. At that moment, a man calls out to him, asking if by any chance he would like to join them to study the Bible. All the knights are excited about it, but he rejects the offer and realizes that, although the trip has been comfortable, he did not imagine they would be so aggressive with this religious preaching. The Elder appears, saying that it is a shame, and says that if he at least heard the voice of God, perhaps he could even become a cleric of the order. Ian thinks about hearing the voice of God, since, if he really could speak with God, maybe he could ask about his system window and why he reincarnated into this world. With that in mind, he goes to Dietrich and asks if by any chance he can participate in those studies. He begins reading the Bible little by little and starts understanding everything that is happening. Sometime later, most of them are already asleep, and a voice tells the MC that his attitude is excellent. Ian thanks him for the praise, and the knight asks what suddenly happened. He becomes confused and asks if by any chance the guy did not just say that he liked his attitude in reading the Bible. Dietrich panics because he did not say anything and cannot believe that he actually heard some voice. The MC swears that someone spoke to him and stops to think whether the voice might not be human. Just thinking that makes the voice appear again, merely laughing, and it says that perhaps it is a being that cannot be called human. The MC points upward and asks if by any chance it is a god. The voice only says, probably. He does not fully understand whether it is true or not, but even so, he asks what the hell the system window is and why he reincarnated into this world. The voice only laughs, and he tells it to answer already. At that instant, a strong wind passes through his body, and everything becomes calm afterwards. Ian says he cannot believe this, and, depressed, says that damn voice went away. This leaves him extremely furious, and he starts shouting for God to come back right away, or things will get bad. Dietrich tries to calm him down, but the MC is going crazy, shouting for him to come down already, or he will lose his patience. After that, he studied the Bible like a madman, all just to speak with the damn goddess one more time, and the result was that he obtained the skill, Sacred Arts, a skill to converse with the gracious, noble, sacred, and beautiful absolute being of this world, and the system notifies him that he did a good job. The MC realizes it appeared very quickly. The system asks him, please, to show interest in God by studying more and understanding more, and the more interest he shows, the happier the goddess will become, since she is the gracious, noble, sacred, and beautiful ruler of this world. Ian begins to get irritated, unable to believe this skill that the goddess gave him, and wonders if the author, calling herself a goddess, threw him into this world just to watch from above and laugh. He thinks this is crap, since he wants to ask her directly, but his level of sacred arts is still far too low. He realizes there is not much he can do, since he will have to find more mysteries, gather more points, and, in the end, strengthen his sacred arts. A few days later, still in the forest, the knights continue battling the bandits, defeating them one by one. Elder asks Ian if he is okay, and he replies that he is, since that is obvious, because the knights annihilated all the bandits. The elder asks if the girl got hurt. She replies that she did not and asks how he is. The old man laughs and says that no matter how old he gets, he would never fall to people of this level. Ian comments that he heard Elder used to be a mercenary, and that is incredible. Elder admits that he was, and despite the way he is now, he was quite famous in his youth. That is why he uses the codename Elder, since there are many idiots who start attacking just from hearing his real name. Ian realizes that the guy really is quite famous, and the old man shouts that they finished off the evil band of bandits, and the whole squad celebrates. One of them points out that the road splits. One path leads east, straight to the Count's castle. The other leads to the forest, where the manticore appeared. Elder explains that the forest where the mage lives is just ahead, and tells them to go. Ian tells them to wait and suggests to Lucy that they meet the mage first and then head to the Count. She refuses and says she will go ahead. The MC gets worried and asks if she will really be fine alone. She laughs and says she is not a child and will take the fastest path to her uncle's house, then says goodbye, saying they will meet again soon. The MC watches her leave, but does not know if she will really be fine, and knows he needs to resolve things quickly so he can go to her. Elder, confused, asks where the little girl is going. He replies that he will go after her soon, and asks if they will meet the mage shortly. The old man confirms and asks if he is psychologically prepared. He does not quite understand what he means by that, until the elder says that mages tend to be complicated, and the mage is irritated because of the order, so there is no telling what she will do. The MC still does not know why the hell they need to clean up the order's mess. Elder is not sure whether to say it and reveals that, in truth, they were paid for it. Ian realizes what this is about, though it makes sense, since they are all wearing armor that is far too good. The old man tells him not to worry, since he is certain she will forgive him when she sees him. He reflects that this will be the first time he meets a mage besides his master, and hopes everything goes well. Meanwhile, in the cabin in the middle of the forest, an intense green air overflows everywhere from inside. The animals drop dead just from breathing it. Inside is Monty Campbell, the plant witch. A group of mercenaries appears and begs her to lend her magic so the warriors can capture the manticore, and asks her not to forget that above all, the forest is under the Order's administration. She thinks this is a pain, and says that if they truly want her help, they must enjoy eating the food she prepared. That is, of course, if they have the courage not to run away just from the smell. She lets out a sinister laugh and tells the knights to hurry up and taste her delicious soup. The next day, the group arrives at the cabin, and the elder explains that the mage is named Mani Campbell and is a famous plant witch. Besides manipulating plants, she also creates terrifying and deadly poisons. That said, he explains that, in reality, they need a powerful poison to hunt the beast, so the situation turned out to be perfect. The knights notice a horrible smell, and the MC quickly realizes what smell it is. After they get close enough, the witch comes out of the house laughing and says she has been waiting for the warriors of Santiago. The old man does not know if this is a good thing, but she says it was good that they showed up, because now they must enjoy the banquet she prepared. The air remains unbearable, and the warriors do not know if they will be able to endure it. Elder points out that she did not need to prove her strength this way, but the witch simply says she served a rare dish to her guests with the utmost care, but warns that if they are not going to eat, they should leave. The old man is worried about that, and the warriors even try to taste it, but the smell is unbearable, to the point that they nearly vomit. She wonders if perhaps she exaggerated a little, but when she looks at the MC, she does not understand why that madman is eating so much. After all, he is devouring all the soup loaded with garlic. Curious, Mani asks if he is okay, and the MC, with a sparkle in his eyes, replies that the food is absurdly delicious. She cannot believe it, and he explains that the garlic in particular is fantastic and goes back to eating as if it were chocolate. Everyone around them cannot understand this absurdity, and the witch interrupts him since she has seen enough. She says she has been a plant witch for 40 years, but has never seen someone as absurd as him and, for that reason, asks what his name is. The MC introduces himself as Ian Eridus Raven. She is startled upon hearing that name and asks if he happens to be the apprentice of the pyromancer Elidith. A good while later, night arrives, and the witch prepares other delicious dishes as an apology for earlier and tells them to eat as much as they want. Ian is disappointed since the chicken stew had been too good. Mani learns what is going on and asks if they are really going to hunt a manticore. They reply that they are, but she soon warns them that it will not be easy. That is because Count Katina hired hunters to try to capture that beast, but they were all exterminated. The elder says he is prepared for that and reveals that he hunted a few times in his youth. The witch then asks the MC if he has ever hunted. That is because she believes he is a complete mage, since he was trained by Elidith, and asks him to share the wisdom he possesses with the knights. He remembers some things his master said, such as that, at some point, he will need to get involved with people regardless of his own will, and must never treat that moment carelessly. He knows he does not necessarily need to go through the trouble of hunting the beast, but if he refuses the knight's proposal, bad rumors could spread in the Circle of Mages. The Circle of Mages is an organization formed by mages released by the Magic Academy to ensure the proper use of mysteries. Ian keeps racking his brain over this, since if something like that happens, he will not be able to face his master and might not even be able to ask other mages for help. Because of that, he looks to the side, sees all the knights happy, and says he will accompany them. The next morning arrives, and they go to the forest. They soon notice that the atmosphere is somewhat strange, but since they know Awim, Lucy is probably waiting. He simply hopes everything goes well. At that moment, the crow returns saying that it found it and points out that the manticore is just ahead. The old man asks if something is wrong, and the MC replies that according to the crow, the manticore is just ahead. Elder is surprised by this ability to talk to a crow. Ian basically kept the animal on his shoulder and made it get used to human speech. Sometime later, the elder begins to feel an overwhelming bloodlust. An idea crosses the MC's mind, and he suggests doing something. The old man asks what it would be. He gives the idea that if the manticore really is just a monster, then maybe it would be better to simply persuade it. Elder has no idea whether something like that would work, and the sorceress points out that manticores are not exactly the type you can negotiate with. The MC asks what she knows about summons, and she, furious, replies that she knows very well what mysteries are, since he is treating her like a laywoman. She guarantees that if he manages to persuade the beast, she will run to tell Elidith. Ian does not understand why she would tell her master instead of praising him. At this moment, Dietrich tells them to look ahead. After all, the giant manticore is right in front of them. They realize how close they are, and the elder tells the mages not to leave his side. The soldiers point out that they applied poison to all the weapons. This is a special poison developed by Mani. The captain orders them to fire the arrows, and the knights obey. The MC keeps observing with his sharpened vision and sees the arrow shattering against the monster's body. He reports this, since the arrow was completely useless. The elder becomes worried because things have become complicated. At this moment, the manticore laughs and begins approaching the group. Ian realizes how terrifying that laugh is and knows that the beast is right in front of them, and there is no time to apply the poison again. He knows he has no choice and starts shouting like a madman. The group of soldiers does not understand what is happening, and the witch cannot believe that a simple boy managed to do it, since he stood before the beast and was not devoured. The manticore admits that she is surprised, because a human who can speak with her is something uncommon. He feels relieved and says he is calmer because the words worked, but he freezes the moment she tells them to get lost, and, on top of that, tells him to go fuck himself. Ian gets pissed for being treated like shit and asks what the hell this is. The manticore says that this is better since he should drop that fake politeness, and tells him that if he wants something, he should say it straight out. Ian, without beating around the bush, says that he wants her skin. The beast starts laughing like never before and points out that she liked him for being direct. She suggests that the two of them join forces to tear apart the rest of the humans present. The MC thinks this is absurd, and she states that she will savor each one's flesh, and he can keep all the money and all the women he wants. After having fun with all of them, she will finish them off one by one and thinks that is completely wonderful. Ian tells her to shut up, spits on the monster's paw, and says it was so disgusting that he could not even listen until the end, and, without any fear, shows his finger, pointing out that the beast is a piece of trash of the worst possible kind. The soldiers simply cannot believe that he insulted such a powerful monster like that. Meanwhile, the manticore thanks him for his words and charges forward, saying that now the MC seems like someone worth killing. Ian is startled to see the monster speaking the language of the Empire, and the witch, seeing that things have become complicated, activates her ability. A flower begins to grow and heads toward the manticore, covering her completely. Elder questions what the hell is going on, and she replies that she merely wrapped the manticore with her ability. The old man says he already knows that, but wants to know why she wrapped the nearby knights along with it. She becomes curious, since things have become far too complicated, and tells them to focus on killing a monster quickly. Elder does not accept something like that, and runs to the other side of the wall of vines. After finally arriving, he shouts, asking if everyone is all right. The soldiers answer that they are fine, but the MC is shocked when he sees that Dietrich is extremely injured. The man apologizes for letting the manticore escape, and the elder tells him not to say nonsense. The MC feels the weight of that scene and becomes furious because everyone did the best they could. He never imagined that he would see someone truly die, and, of all the knights, it had to be Dietrich, and only then does it sink in that this world is a place where monsters and wars are part of everyday life. The deaths he had heard about were only stories, but it is something that is hovering over him all the time. Ian does not accept any of this and goes over to the warrior, crouches down, and says that when he was taught about the Bible, he heard something nice. If you believe from the bottom of your heart and pray, the heavens will open. Dietrich smiles and says yes. The MC releases his energy and asks everyone to pray together. He asks the almighty heaven to see this and says that his #1 fan is dying, and because of that, he wants to know if something can be done. Immediately, a voice says that she is listening, and if it is his wish, then so be it. An even more intense glow appears between them, and the soldiers watch attentively from afar. The MC's hands are glowing more and more, and he simply does not understand what is happening. A voice tells Dietrich to wake up, and he finds himself before a beautiful castle, until a woman in white approaches him while flying. He asks if, by any chance, she is the goddess, and immediately bows, with her saying that she is happy to see him. He believes that, if the goddess is before him, then that means he is in heaven. She points out that he still has things to do and asks him to spread her will further. He must help the weak, granting them happiness. In addition, he must also help the Apostle Ian, because that is her will. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, and the soldiers ask if he is all right. Dietrich tries to process where he is, and the MC asks what it feels like to come back from the dead. Instantly, Dietrich clings to Ian's hand, crying, and says that he was saved by the greater being thanks to him. Ian thinks about this and believes that if he was able to use the sacred arts because the goddess of the divine order lent him her power, then basically the guy is not wrong. But curious, he asks how he knew that, and whether the goddess said that he needed to be saved because he had many things left to do. Dietrich remembers that those were the exact words said by the goddess and becomes even more impressed with the MC, to the point of bowing before him, the apostle sent by the gods. The knights continue watching, since they did indeed witness their friend being saved by Ian, but calling him an apostle of God is an exaggeration, and they believe he must be hallucinating. The witch admits that young people are extremely energetic, especially with one on the verge of death. Elder wastes no time and suggests going after the manticore once again. They agree, and the MC says that he will send his crow to go ahead. The old man asks if the animal will be fine, since the monster is dangerous. Ian says not to worry, since everything will be all right. Despite that, he clearly remembers how the beast is an uncommon bastard and warns that they need to completely eliminate the monster from the face of the earth. At this moment, the village is in chaos. That is because the manticore is attacking everyone in her path. People run in desperation, and the old man breaks free from his son, who panics upon seeing his father before the giant monster. Even though he is afraid, the man points his pitchfork at the monster and tells her to leave everyone alone. The manticore laughs and asks if, by any chance, the person on the ground is his father. The man is startled, since a monster can speak the human language. The beast makes an offer that, if he kills his own father lying on the ground and hands him over, she will spare the lives of the other humans in the city. The man, even while dying of fear, replies that he will never accept such an absurd thing. The manticore laughs at that and tells him to die already, since there is no deal at all. At this moment, an arrow flies toward the monster and hits her eye directly, this time causing damage. Elder appears running and knocks the monster away with his sword. He orders the sacred knights of Santiago to prepare for battle. The warriors immediately get into position in front of the monster. The manticore comments that they are probably dying to get killed until the MC appears, calling her an idiot. After all, she is fighting a pointless battle. The beast tells him to shut up, and the MC points out that, apparently, this is what she calls the howl of a defeated dog, since she is nothing more than a dog that only barks but does not bite. The monster, completely enraged, charges at him, and after getting close, the MC smiles. The sorceress appears and recites her spell, ordering the flora to bloom. The plants begin to grow and trap the monster, even if only temporarily. The elder shouts for them to take advantage of that moment. They grab their canteens and throw gasoline on the monster. The manticore screams that these cheap tricks are useless, but the MC, already out of patience, activates his ability and engulfs the monster in an infernal flame, which becomes even more powerful with the gasoline thrown on it. With everything resolved, they go to the center of the city, and the citizens thank them, since, thanks to the Order of Knights, they managed to bring peace to the city. Ian is just watching, seeing that he is not getting any credit at all, and his crow, with a pitiful face, asks why its master is being left out. He imagines that people must be scared because he turned the manticore into a ball of fire. At that moment, someone calls out to him. The man and his father thank him for saving them, and Ian says it is all right, but deep down, he knows that he did not do it just to be thanked. Elder also goes over to him and says that he was impressed, since they were only able to deal with the manticore thanks to him. Ian feels embarrassed by that praise and says that he only did what Mani told him to do, and also asks him, please, to raise his head. The elder is surprised, since it is rare to see someone so humble with such incredible abilities, and he knows that he will certainly captivate the nobility and could very well become someone truly great. Soon after, some guards appear, asking if they were the ones responsible for dealing with the manticore. The elder confirms it, but asks who they are. They apologize for the late introduction and answer that they are knights belonging to the castle, and say that, if it is not an inconvenience, they would like them to accompany them. because Count Katina invited them to visit him. After arriving at the place, they are welcomed with a delicious banquet. The Count says that they are all incredible, and that, if the castle had knights as incredible as them, the kingdom would be different. Then, he points to Mani, saying that since they are allies, he will no longer bother her. After that, he turns to Ian, since he heard about him from Lucy, but is shocked to see that the MC is not even paying attention, since he is more focused on the food. He realizes that they are looking at him and asks if something happened. Katina simply cannot believe how someone can show such an attitude before a count. The MC realizes that he is being impolite and apologizes, since the food was delicious and he could not hear anything. The Count understands and says that he heard that he took care of Lucy, and because of that, he gives him a chest as a gift. He thinks the shine is far too strong and cannot believe that he is receiving a golden magic scroll. The moment it is torn in half, the magic of the scroll is activated. He takes it in his hand, finding it far too incredible, and his surprise grows even more when he sees that every sentence on the scroll seems to be high class. Katina asks if he liked it, since he prepared it especially for him. The MC thanks him for the precious gift, and the Count says it was nothing, since he brought his niece back safely, and without dragging things out, he calls for her. The girl opens the door and appears in a completely different outfit, which nearly makes Ian spit out his food as he tries to understand what that appearance is. He tries to understand where the hell that hat came from. Lucy takes a deep breath and asks if Ian is doing well, since it has been a while since the two of them saw each other. He answers that he is, and the old man realizes that the two of them were not siblings and wonders if by any chance it might be a deeper romance. The MC answers that it is not something like that, since there were some circumstances behind it. The Count calls his attention once again because he has a proposal to make and says that he is preparing to avenge his niece, so he wants to know if he would be willing to lend him the strength he possesses. The MC begins to understand the real reason he received a golden scroll, although he did not imagine that he would have to risk his life on a battlefield. After all, he only needs to provide support with magic, just like he did against the Manticore, and if everything goes well, he will be able to receive double the rewards from both the Count and Lucy. With that in mind, he answers that, as a humble mage, he is happy to help. 3 days later, still at the castle, the Order of the Knights of Santiago prepares to leave, and Lucy apologizes because the Count cannot appear since he is busy, but assures them that once the group visits the territory of Tarion again, they will be treated very well. Elder says that he is looking forward to it. The MC just keeps watching, since the number of knights has decreased significantly after they were convinced by the Count using money. The old man thanks Ian for everything and says that once he has time, he could visit Trifar Island, since he will show him some mysteries that may interest him. The MC is confused, since he has never heard of that island. The elder explains that it is an island floating in a sea of coral, and that, if he says he is there to see the Savior, everyone will welcome him gladly. He asks if Savior happens to be his real name instead of Elder. The old man assumes that there is no longer any reason to hide it, and reveals that he is the savior of the Orcus family. At that same moment, Lucy understands who he is, and asks if he really is the savior of the White Wolves. He is pleased that she recognized him, but the MC has no idea what that title is. She cannot believe such an absurd thing, and explains that the White Wolves are a group of mercenaries who operated directly under the orders of the former emperor. To the leader of that group, the emperor of that time granted the honorary title of Swordmaster. Having said that, she points out that the person in front of them is none other than the Swordmaster. The MC shows no interest at all, and the girl becomes indignant since the guy is a living legend. The old man laughs, since that is very much like Ian. He does not understand what he meant by that, and the savior, imagining what a normal reaction would be like after discovering his true identity, says it was nothing and says goodbye, since he needs to leave. The soldiers also say goodbye, especially Dietrich, who begs for them to meet again. The savior greets him formally, and the MC says that as soon as things calm down, he will go to Trifar Island for a visit. With that, the group officially separates. Sometime later, the Count joins his army and remembers when his niece appeared, begging him to avenge her mother's death. He becomes furious, since the guy had the courage to kill his sister and still dared to marry Lucy. However, For Katina's territory, this situation is not completely bad, because if they use Lucy as a shield to secure the territory and make her marry one of his retainers, the Tarian barony will fall under his power. He thinks about this and reflects that, at the right time, he will talk to her, but only when everything is resolved. Then he shouts to his army that he will judge the despicable usurper and asks, please, for the army to support him in this fight. At night, the camps are set up, and water is boiled in the cauldron. The intrigued soldiers question what he is doing. The MC explains that he is boiling his spoon. Lucy wonders if he is perhaps planning to eat a spoon, and the soldiers whisper that it is madness to make spoon soup. Ian calls them all idiots, since he is only sterilizing the utensil. She does not quite understand what that means, and he replies that it is a kind of mystery. That is because they would not understand even if he explained it. The soldiers are surprised by this and go to Ian, asking him to prepare their food together. He becomes furious and shouts that the damn thing is not soup. Sometime later, the group is talking, and Lucy mentions that she had been thinking about something, since she had promised him a reward for his help. He remembers that, and she says that at first she wanted to reward him with gold coins, but since he already has so many, he must be tired of them by now, and because of that, she tried to think of something that would truly make him happy to receive. The result of that idea was the magic sword, a Norishil. It was granted to the first Baron Tarian by a fairy. Legend says that the Baron fell in love with the fairy, wielded his sword, and became the one who saved the fairy kingdom. The MC tries to imagine what kind of cheap fantasy novel this is, and even asks why the Tarian family still has the title of Baron if they possess such an incredible magic sword. Lucy does not really know how to answer, and says that the story is from 400 years ago. Besides, the sword was buried in the tomb of the first Baron. He finds that somewhat macabre, and she suggests digging up the tomb to get it. Ian thinks that is absurd, since she is suggesting digging up something from one of her descendants, who was sealed in his own tomb, to hand it over to a complete stranger. He asks if the ancestor's tomb is perhaps a time capsule or something like that. She does not understand the question, and he says that, from what he noticed, the magic sword is valuable and would probably be better used for the good of her house. After all, it is much better than being used forever by some guy who will only brag that he became a baron. She becomes sulky, since he never accepts anything gladly, but says that she is extremely grateful for what he did for her, and that this is a reward worthy of that gratitude. Irritated, she shouts that this is the reason she is offering her precious treasure. Having said that, she calls him an idiot and leaves. The MC acknowledges that he exaggerated a little, and at that moment, a soldier approaches, reporting that the Count wants to ask for a favor. Meanwhile, in the city, a man is defending his territory from several thieves. The guys laugh and tell him to hand over 3 chickens, since, if he does that, they will be kind enough to leave him alone. The soldier points out that they are about to go to war and cannot fight on an empty stomach. At that instant, they hear a noise and realize it is a crow identical to the one the MC has. Suddenly, Oberon starts shouting that the master has arrived. The 3 do not believe they are hearing a talking crow until they look back and see Ian asking what the hell they are doing there. He meets with the Count and asks what favor he needs. Katina takes a while to start speaking, and the MC begins to imagine what it could be, because that kind of hesitation must mean something important. The Count asks him to put a leash on the mercenaries in the city. Ian finds that strange and questions whether the knights would not be more suitable for that job. He points out that the knights consider the mercenaries their comrades, so they usually cover up their crimes and turn a blind eye. He could turn a blind eye if the problem were only the mercenaries' morale, but the territory belongs to his niece. For that reason, he begs him, since, if he gives them a warning, the mercenaries should be careful with their actions. That is why the MC has that scary face together with his crow, and it is working, because the mercenaries are dying of fear. He calls them all bums, since they keep invading other people's homes, and warns them that it is time to apply a punishment by getting rid of them as an example. The soldiers ask for forgiveness and promise they will never cause trouble again. After that, in the city, from the moment he captured the mercenaries with the help of the crow, they became so afraid that they did not even go outside, because in their minds, they would die if they did. The Count and Lucy were happy to hear the news. However, not everything is perfect, since the soldiers went to the Count and reported that they were facing serious problems. He points out that, to the usurpers, the army is no longer a threat. The MC asks if that is really the case even with a force of 400 men. He replies that this is because the army is completely harmless. If the army had looted the territory, the people of the territory would have demanded that Grimes stop the invasion. That is because the Terrian territory is in Grimes' hands. But thanks to the peaceful march, the guy managed to gain time to gather his forces. On top of that, since the troops could not act as they wanted, their morale dropped drastically. Ian realizes that they have indeed ended up in a strange situation. The captain asks for permission for them to start looting from now on. The Count does not really know what to do and asks the MC if he happens to have any plan to solve this situation. Lucy becomes worried since things are getting difficult, and Ian says it is not completely impossible. Everyone starts cheering, since apparently a plan came up very quickly. Meanwhile, the soldiers simply watch, since, in their minds, the MC is a very arrogant mage. Meanwhile, somewhere in Terrian territory, the man comes out of his house and is startled when he comes face to face with the MC. He asks if he is the owner of the wheat field. The guy first wants to know who is asking, and one of the soldiers tells him to show respect, since he is speaking to Lord Ian, apprentice of the mage Elidith. The guy is startled upon hearing this and kneels, apologizing, since he did not know he was such a renowned figure. The MC looks to the side and says that the wheat is no longer good. Then, raising his staff, he says that the evil aura of the first Baron has infiltrated that field. The soul of that Baron is furious for having had his land unjustly taken. The man despairs at those words, since he does not know what he should do. The MC tells him to wait a little and starts pretending that he is hearing voices. He points out that the heavens are speaking and said that if Lucy inherits the title of Baron, the anger will decrease, and then runs off, saying that there is a sinister aura just ahead. The man tries to process what the hell just happened. A little later, the rumors he spread took effect, and the people of the city began to feel distrust toward the usurper Grime. To escape the calamity, they demanded that Lucy be crowned. Thanks to that, Ponte's army had its morale raised, and they headed toward Grimes' location, while the entire time, one specific guard kept watching everything attentively. Sometime later, already in the afternoon, the mercenaries went to the Count to say that they did not wish to be on a dishonorable battlefield. Katina does not understand what that means, and he points out that Ian spread rumors that the city is cursed, and they think that traveling alongside a mage like that, who brings curses with him, is not a good thing, and their honor will fall to the ground. The MC responds that curses are just a bunch of lies and asks why they are believing the rumors he spread. They accuse him, saying that they cannot trust the words of a mage, because he is definitely trying to deceive everyone. Ian realizes that there is no longer any way to know whether he is really deceiving the others or not, and believes that they will treat everything that is said as a lie. He thinks this is very irrational. However, the main players in a war are the knights, and the Count has an expression on his face that shows he knows this very well. After all, without the knights, there can be no battle. In the end, he has no choice but to listen to the mercenaries' demands and wonders whether, in a situation like this, he really needs to be there. In any case, he tells Ponte that there is no need to worry and withdraws, since, if his presence is unpleasant, then he will gladly leave. But before that, he gives a warning, saying that no matter what happens from that moment on, they should not even dream of asking for his help. Lucy runs outside, asking him to wait, and she apologizes, since the knights started picking a fight out of nowhere, and to make things worse, her uncle was so stunned that he could not even intervene. He understands all of this, and even feels a little better, since he can see the sincerity in her apology. Then, he tells her not to worry, since he is not angry. After all, it is not as if leaving the battlefield would cause some huge disaster, especially because he cannot imagine finding some mystery among so many corpses. She keeps crying, since he lost the chance to make his name shine, but he only smiles, places his hand on her head, and says that he does not care about his name. As long as she gets the sword she promised, that is already enough. Lucy gets emotional and guarantees that she will give him that magic sword, and, if that is not enough, She could even marry him and give him the territory. He says that there is no chance of that happening, but she is persistent and guarantees that she can give him more if necessary, so he just has to marry her. But he is very calm about it. A few days later, the army moves out, and Grime, mounted on his horse, watches from the top of the mountain and questions whether the number of enemies is around 400. The soldier beside him asks if he is getting scared, but he guarantees that it is nothing like that and, furious, imagines that Lucy's insolence, standing beside the Count, is unforgivable. However, he knows that it is useless, because as soon as he wins this battle, she will belong to him again. In addition, he has the Black Knight of the East, whose martial skill is unmatched. He is confident that victory is practically guaranteed. It is announced that the army is approaching, and Grime shouts that he does not care whether there are 400 or 4,000. No matter who they are, anyone who raises a blade against him will be exterminated. He says this, and his army advances, and the fierce battle begins between the two armies. Meanwhile, the Count waits in another location together with the MC and Lucy. The commander says that they have the advantage, and the MC imagines that the difference between the forces is huge and that they will probably win easily. Only then is he startled when he sees the Black Knight destroying everything on the battlefield with overwhelming strength. The commander says that he is the Black Knight of the Eastern Empire, a land famous for its long winters, and from the black armor, there is no mistaking who he is. Ian tries to understand why a foreign knight is there, and that guy goes around massacring every soldier he finds ahead of him. The MC knows that something is wrong, because while the left and right flanks have the advantage, the center is retreating, and if things continue like this, they are all screwed. Thinking about this, he asks what will happen if the center is broken through. The commander says that, if that happens, they will be the next targets. Everyone is startled by this, and he says again that if the central line falls, the enemy will not bother hunting down the soldiers who flee, so they will go directly after Lucy. The Count stands up angrily and shouts for Decade to go defeat the Black Knight. The MC does not like this at all and cannot understand why Decade, of all people, has to face a monster. That is because the man was the only one who truly treated him like a human, is a real knight, and if he is sent now, he will probably die. Because of that, he tells them to wait, since this is a suicide mission and they can find another way. However, the knight says that he will obey that order. Ian cannot believe this absurdity and asks what he is thinking. He responds that he will simply follow the Count's orders and stop the enemy's advance. The MC knows that there is no way to stop someone so strong and shouts that this is certain death and that they should be focused on retreating with the Count. Decade says that he was taken in by Lucy, and, because of that, he must honor his knight's oath. Ian knows this, but, from a modern perspective, it is a complete waste of life. Because of that, he shouts that this is not strategy and that he will only be throwing his life away like the other soldiers. However, deep down, he knows that Decade is aware of what will happen and is still accepting it, and he does not understand how this world works, since the good ones always have to be sacrificed. At that moment, a knight approaches, and the MC is startled, since that guy should be protecting the center. He points out that he failed and tells them to retreat with the Count immediately. Ian thinks that is incredibly shameless. Decade asks Ian to escort the Count and Lucy back safely, since he will do everything he can to buy time, and, because of that, asks his partners to follow him. The MC watches, wondering if this is the right thing to do, letting a person go, even knowing that the result will be death, because among all the trash, there was someone who truly followed the knight's code until the end. A war started by idiots, and Decade will be the only one to pay the price. Lucy sees the MC frozen and asks what he is doing. After all, they have to go. Since the Count ordered the retreat, he climbs onto the horse alone and tells her to go ahead with the other vermin and run away. She does not understand what he intends to do and is startled when she hears that he will join Decade in the battle. He tells her that he will make sure they meet again alive. She asks him to wait, but the MC heads to the battlefield anyway. He shouts for Sir Decade, and the man asks what he is doing on the battlefield. The MC responds that he will draw the enemies away, and because of that, asks him to go protect the Count. Decade refuses, since a boy could not face them alone. He tells him not to worry. After all, he is a mage and can manage. The captain notices that look and is pleased since it is definitely not a bluff. He says that apparently worrying for nothing and seeing the army approaching says he is counting on the MC's power. With that said, they return to ensure the Count's safety. At that instant, a dagger flies past Ian's head and hits the tree beside him dead on. The group panics, saying they are going to die, but the MC tells them to calm down and figures he should lure them toward the side of the forest. Following that strategy, sometime later, as it is already getting late, the soldiers begin searching everywhere, and when they see someone on horseback, they question what that is. It was Ian reciting a spell, and they do not understand what the hell he's muttering. He tears the scroll, and a colossal bolt of lightning falls into the forest, striking exactly where the soldiers were. With this victory, he feels relieved, since he at least solved things temporarily, but his biggest concern is whether Decade managed to meet up with the Count. After all, there is no way the commander could be defeated by a few ordinary pursuers. He returns to make sure of that, and the Black Knight watches, hidden behind the trees. The Count's escort continued fleeing at full speed, but the enemies soon appear behind them. The commander orders them to shoot the arrows, and the shots hit some soldiers, as well as Silg, knocking the fat man to the ground. The Count stops when he sees his escort defeated, but Silg gets up, since he still has not given up, and tries to hold back the pursuers alone, but he is soon hit and falls like a banana to the ground. Lucy panics, not knowing what they can do, and the pursuer warns that it is time for them to surrender quietly. However, Silg gets up once again and steps in front of the two to protect them. The archer asks if he happens to be a monster, and this time the arrow heads toward the Count, knocking the old man off his horse. Lucy starts crying and asks him to hold on firmly, but there is not much to do except keep crying. The pursuer thinks it is a pain, since the Count really died, and the captain had ordered him to capture him alive. He no longer cares about that, since there is nothing he can do, and he will at least capture the girl instead. He orders his troops to capture Lucy, and the soldiers immediately charge at her. Once again, Silg steps in front, telling them to stay away, but he is struck by a fatal attack to the chest and falls to the ground without even reacting. She refuses to be sold to Grime once again, and because of that, begs the MC to save her. At that instant, the spell of darkness appears before her and surrounds everyone around them, leaving them unable to see anything. She panics, since she cannot see, until the MC appears, pulling her onto his horse. She finally sees that it is him, and Ian asks where the Count is. She laments, since her uncle died. The MC cannot believe it, and asks if she is hurt. She says no and thanks him, since she is alive thanks to him, but asks what happened and where Decade is. The MC says that he was supposed to have met up with the Count, but believes something went wrong. Even so, he tries to cheer her up, since the night is probably fine and they should go to the river. After all, they need to shake off the Black Knight who is pursuing them. As soon as he thinks that, Lucy gets startled because that guy is right behind them. The knight slowly approaches, and the MC knows that if they are caught, it is game over. The man gets straight to the point and tells him to hand over the girl. The two worry about the situation they are in, and the MC points out that that guy's employer is complete trash. The knight replies that it is none of his business, and this makes Lucy furious, since Grime killed her parents and stole the territory, and a person like that deserves nothing less than death. The Black Knight regrets it, since he only does the job for money and leaves. As a final warning, he tells him once again to hand over the girl. The MC gets a little closer and orders him to jump. The enemy's horse becomes alert and obeys the order to jump. The knight does not understand what is going on and jumps off the horse, which runs away from that place. He asks what the hell he did to the animal, but Ian wastes no time and activates his other ability. However, this time, he does it in the river and creates a huge wall of water that heads toward him, forcing the Black Knight to flee from that tsunami. They approach to see if the enemy was really defeated, and the MC is not sure whether the guy actually died. However, he becomes interested in the armor, which is incredibly cool, and even considers taking it, but he knows that, knowing his luck, some psychopath might stab him in the back while he is wearing it. Still, he sees no better option, since the armor should be his and not someone else's. He starts by removing the helmet and the two are startled to see that, in truth, the knight is a woman. They light a campfire and leave the woman tied to a tree until she wakes up and sees the two sitting calmly. She starts shouting, asking for the armor, and the MC simply says he disarmed her. After all, he does not know her well enough. Barenka thinks it is awful that she was seen like that by the enemy, and Lucy teases her, saying it serves her right, and warns that going so far while dressed as a man just to fight could only come from someone who likes adrenaline. The MC realizes that Lucy is very sharp with her words. Then again, in this world, wearing clothes of the opposite sex is the greatest taboo. In other words, a guy dressed as a woman would be arrested instantly. The princess tells him to wait, since very soon the rumor that the Black Knight was just a woman in disguise will spread throughout the entire kingdom. Barenka asks her to at least protect her honor, but Lucy does not care about that, since a mercenary would have no honor and is as rotten as an ordinary thief. These insults begin to irritate the blonde, and Ian tells her to stop provoking her, since it is obvious that she is saying that because she is nervous. She denies being nervous, but the MC touches her, since she is trembling a lot, and tells her to rest, because he will handle the situation. She apologizes and goes to sleep for a while. He notices that they are finally alone, and points out that the Black Knight is making a scene over nothing. She disagrees and says that, apparently, he does not believe in the Church of the Celestial God. Ian does not understand that and says that, actually, he is a believer, although he does not know what that has to do with anything. She is surprised by that, since he is saying he is a believer, but sees nothing wrong with a woman dressing as a man. He points out that there is nothing wrong with that, since men also dress as women, but she does not believe such an absurdity, since she sees no sense in it. The MC mentions video game cosplays, which basically have guys dressing up with bunny ears, but she does not understand what the hell he is talking about. The MC tells her not to blame herself for it just because her secret was discovered. She admits that he is quite strong and the most eccentric mage she has ever met. Because of that, she demands treatment worthy of a knight and tells him to untie her. He replies that obviously he will not do that, especially because he does not trust her. Barenka rebels and shouts that she has already sworn on her honor as a knight that she will not attack him, but he does not care about that, since she has not even said who the hell she is. She gives her name and says she is from the Metz family. She explains that her homeland is the county of Wince. It was a barren strip of land on the eastern border of the empire. As the eldest daughter, she was trained in swordsmanship from a young age to become the heir, but when her father died, her mother made her younger brother the head of the family. She ended up fighting with everything she had to recover her rightful place, but lost in court and was exiled. The MC interrupts and asks if that does not mean she should be imprisoned, and he does not understand what she is doing outside. She simply replies that she ran away, and he does not believe that absurdity and asks what will happen if they catch her. Barenka says that will not happen because she is going to the kingdom of Roxlan. He asks about that place, and she explains that it is the kingdom where her father served as a knight when he was young. So, if she shows up there as his daughter, the people will probably welcome her. He says he understands and thinks it is way too foolish to believe that a place will simply welcome her just because it is where her father used to work, and he cannot believe how naive she is. He moves on to another topic and asks why she was dressed as a man, and things get even worse when he asks if the reason is that she likes girls. She tells him to go to hell, since that is not it, and replies that apparently the Empire discriminates against female knights. Besides, her father used to say that they were savages and that she needed to be careful. Then she says, there is one more thing, since her armor is enchanted with magic. He becomes intrigued by this, and she explains that basically, when she puts on the helmet, her voice becomes masculine. Ian realizes that the armor was probably enchanted from the beginning, and she confirms it, since that armor and the helmet belong to her father. The MC remains curious and asks if, by any chance, he could take a look. He takes the helmet in his hand and cannot understand exactly what is happening. At that moment, the system appears and informs him that it is not possible to learn the skill yet. He must witness a more defined mystery to acquire a new skill. He realizes that it is a mystery different from the ones he knows. Another notification appears, saying that an achievement has been blocked. He must witness a new mystery and gain 50 bonus skill points. With that, He currently has 550. He is pleased to see that he has already gathered a good amount of points and decides to check if there is any good skill to get. One in particular catches his attention. It is the necromancy skill, which is at 30% progress and is the ability to communicate with the dead. He cannot believe that this is the new mystery he has just witnessed. He calls Barenka and, as she approaches, reveals that she is apparently being haunted. The girl panics, since he suddenly said something that bizarre. After that, already in the morning, the three are gathered, and the MC hopes that a girls' fight does not happen there. Barenka calls the MC and asks if, by any chance, it is dangerous to use the helmet based on what he understood. He replies that he does not know, since he is not a necromancer, and asks her to use it gradually in combat, because they still do not know whether it will help or get in the way. She thanks him, and Lucy asks if he is sure they should not leave the Black Knight tied up. He replies that there is no problem, since the girl swore on her own life that she will not kill them. But the princess does not trust her much, since that may have been said just for show. He even agrees with that, until Barenka calls the two of them and says that, even though it was for work, they ended up crossing swords, and, even so, Ian spared her life. And even knowing that it is selfish to say this, she asks if they could forget what happened. The MC realizes that the girl is only trying to make peace, but he does not know why she was not more direct. In any case, Ian says it is fine by him, and Barenka says that it does not matter what the princess thinks about her, because she will continue fighting as a knight. Meanwhile, Lucy imagines that this blonde girl is totally into Ian, and if he accepts her, she will probably become a strong ally. With that in mind, she apologizes for the careless comments from the night before. Barenka also apologizes, and the MC finds it very strange that the two made peace so quickly, since it does not seem like Lucy at all. The knight thanks him for his generosity and states that she still needs to repay Ian for saving her life, so she says that she has no other choice but to pay with her body. He does not understand what she means by that, until she kneels and says that until the debt is fully paid, her sword belongs to him. A silence lasts for a few moments, and the MC asks if she even knows him. She replies that she does, since he is a mage, but his question is whether she even knows where he is going. She says it does not matter, since she will travel with him until she pays this debt. He thinks about it and does not know for sure what he should do. He imagines that mages are weak in close combat, and that it would be bad if a villain appeared, and if there had been a knight like her in the war, the result would have been different. Thinking about this, he smiles, calls out to her, and says that from that moment on, he is counting on her to help him. At dawn, Ian orders Oberon to follow the tracks of the mercenaries scattered throughout the region. Soon after, the Raven finds one of the groups and signals MC's men. The soldiers understand the message and know they need to go after them, although one of the guys still asks what would happen if they simply ignored the order. Just imagining the consequences is enough to make the others panic. In the end, around 300 scattered soldiers are gathered together. Once assembled, the knights notice that the Black Knight is there and cannot believe that she is a woman. She draws her sword and challenges anyone dissatisfied with her presence to face her. One of the men confidently accepts, thinking he can prove his worth against the famous Black Knight. The fight ends almost as soon as it begins. Barenka easily knocks the madman out, and the others immediately change their attitude. After seeing their companion unconscious on the ground, no one else seems willing to complain, and the situation is resolved far more peacefully than Ian expected. With the soldiers finally under control, MC prepares to move on, but soon notices another group approaching. When he sees who is coming, he immediately calls out to Sir Decade. Ian is relieved to discover that Decade survived the battle. The knight is also pleased to see him safe and remarks that it looks like the boy managed to handle himself after everything that happened. Lucy appears right behind him and is also happy to see the knight safe. Ian calls Sir Decade over and says he needs to tell him something, but the knight quickly cuts him off and reveals that he already knows about the Count's death. After that, he asks what Ian and Lucy intend to do from this point forward. When MC turns the question back on him, Decade admits that, if possible, he would still like to defeat Grime. However, he makes it clear that the decision is no longer his to make. With the Count dead, Lucy is the one who must decide whether the group will launch another attack. With that, the knight kneels before her and formally recognizes her as Baroness Tarian. The knight explains that they still have soldiers, provisions, and part of their military strength remaining, so if she gives the order, they can continue fighting. Lucy freezes for a moment, unsure how to respond, but Ian calms her down and tells her to simply do what she truly wants. The girl then confronts her feelings, remembers everything Grime took from her, and finally makes her decision. Lucy declares that she wants to drive the man out and reclaim her territory. MC approves of her choice, and Decade wastes no time. He rises and announces to everyone that the Baroness has ordered them to continue the battle. The soldiers erupt in celebration as the group begins reorganizing to move forward. Decade approaches MC and asks for his help in the next battle, saying that he wants to rely on his magic. Ian replies that he was thinking the exact same thing, so the two quickly reach an understanding. The knight even takes the opportunity to apologize for the way his men treated Ian before, but Ian brushes it aside and says it is already in the past. However, the conversation has barely ended when some soldiers show up complaining. The men say they do not need any mage and can win on their own. The commander immediately shuts down their boasting and reminds them that they just lost the last battle, so acting this way makes no sense. Even so, the men stubbornly continue, saying that if they win using a mage's power, everyone will laugh at them afterward. Ian listens without being shaken and says that if they truly have a reason to back out, they are free to leave. His response only angers the group further. The soldiers ask what he means and accuse MC of interfering in matters of war, despite knowing nothing about them. Ian stares at them with such overwhelming pressure that they immediately freeze, then warns them to get out of his way before they end up losing their way. Despite being frightened, the idiots still try to bark a little more. They mock Ian, call him a novice, and say that a mage like him knows nothing about war. They even throw it in his face that he failed to stop the Black Knight of the East or protect the Count. However, MC responds with a smile and says the truth is precisely the opposite. They probably would have won if those useless fools had not been there getting in everyone's way. Decade tries to intervene and defuse the situation, but Ian stops him and makes it clear that he is not finished speaking. Immediately afterward, he begins using magic, and a massive vortex of water starts forming in front of everyone. Even Decade has to brace himself against the wind. Meanwhile, the soldiers who had been barking until now instantly turn pale and retreat in panic. Ian stares at them and makes it clear that, judging by the way they behave, they barely deserve to call themselves knights. Without arguing any further, MC declares that only those truly willing to fight alongside him should follow. With the decision made, the group resumes its march. As evening falls, Barenka appears on horseback wearing the Black Knight's armor beside Ian's forces. Grime's men immediately recognize the figure and cannot understand why the famous knight is standing with the enemy. Grime is furious with Barenka, but the sound of a horn soon echoes across the field, signaling the beginning of the attack. The cavalry charges forward at full speed, with Barenka riding at the front. The girl lowers her helmet's visor and prepares to crush her former allies. Graham notices the movement and shouts for his men to attack at once. The two forces clash, and Barenka immediately begins carving a path through the enemy soldiers. Some of Grime's men still believe the Baroness's army is nothing special, but that confidence does not last long. The blonde cuts down anyone who stands in her way, once again showing why the Black Knight was so feared. She races across the battlefield and tears through the enemy lines almost single-handedly, taking down several soldiers in quick succession. Watching the slaughter caused by someone who once fought at his side, Grime can only grit his teeth in rage. When he spots the girl being protected in the rear, he immediately shifts his focus and decides that capturing her could still turn the tide. Without wasting any time, he orders his men to advance. However, the moment the attack begins, Ian extends his hand and activates his shadow magic. A black curtain descends over the battlefield and swallows the vision of Grime's men. Darkness engulfs everything, and the enemy army descends into panic. The soldiers shout that they cannot see anything, realize that it is magic, and begin fleeing in desperation, screaming for everyone to retreat before they die right there. Grime desperately tries to regain control of the situation, ordering everyone to calm down and return to their positions. However, as he looks around, All he sees is the battlefield descending into complete chaos because of MC's magic. Amid the confusion, Barenka takes advantage of the opening and approaches unnoticed. By the time Grime realizes someone is behind him, it is already too late. The knight's sword presses against his neck, and the usurper instantly freezes. With Grime completely subdued, Barenka orders everyone to drop their weapons. As Grime's sword falls to the ground, and Barenka keeps the usurper under control, the battlefield finally grows quiet. Ian watches the scene beside her, and Lucy, still unable to believe what just happened, asks if they really won. MC confirms it with a smile and officially congratulates the girl, addressing her as Baroness Tarian. After so much misery, Lucy finally realizes that she has reclaimed her territory. While the battlefield begins to be searched, some soldiers are already celebrating and collecting the enemy's weapons and spoils. But amid that victory, Ian senses a strange atmosphere surrounding the dead, as if the entire massacre were drawing a new mystery closer to him. When he approaches one of Grime's men, he feels that bizarre phenomenon actually working. Right away, he begins to wonder whether learning necromancy might have been a mistake. In his mind, Elatus finds Ian dealing with this sinister matter and is horrified, asking if he has lost his mind. However, he tries to act as if it were the most normal thing in the world, treating it as just another effect of his new magic. As Oberon flies over the area, MC reflects on this new mystery surrounding the dead, and what, exactly, this necromancy might still be capable of doing. After the battle, MC stares at his newly acquired necromancy and begins thinking about what he has just done. He realizes that he obtained this power far too easily because of the sheer number of corpses on the battlefield, and he even wonders whether it is truly right to meddle with life in this way. At that moment, Oberon appears and pecks his face to snap him out of his trance, and Ian quickly returns to normal. Shortly afterward, Lucy appears and asks if he has finished organizing the spoils from the battle. MC says that he has, and that he also checked the list of recovered assets. He then asks whether she has seen Sir Decade, since he has not encountered him in a while, and Lucy points out that the knight was talking with the other men. Sometime later, the victory celebration comes to an end, and Decade departs with his knights to return to the main territory. Before leaving for good, he says goodbye to MC and says that he hopes they will meet again someday. Ian replies that he would like that as well, and the two greet each other one last time. After their farewell, Ian receives a heartfelt expression of gratitude for everything he has done. And so, with the situation finally resolved, Grime is publicly executed according to the laws of that world, while the crowd celebrates and begins acclaiming Lucy as the new Baroness Tarian. With the territory finally reclaimed, Lucy savors every second of her newfound popularity and becomes completely full of herself over having so many people cheering for her. She even teases Ian, saying that while she has practically become a celebrity, no one seems to care about him at all. MC immediately gets annoyed by the provocation, but the girl soon changes the subject and reminds him that it is time for them to hit the road. Ian finds it strange that they are leaving so soon, until the girl reminds him that she still owes him the reward she promised. Only then does he understand what she means. Shortly afterward, the two arrive somewhere very different, an ancient underground tomb surrounded by dark energy and filled with human remains scattered across the floor, and Lucy really has brought him to the tomb of her family's ancestor. The group follows a narrow trail through the mountains, with an enormous precipice right beside them, and it is definitely far from peaceful. Ian looks down into the abyss and realizes that a single misstep would be enough to send him straight to the afterlife. The situation is so suspicious that, for a moment, he even imagines Lucy trying to eliminate him so she will not have to hand over the family inheritance. Startled by his own imagination, MC asks whether she is really sure they are going the right way. She enthusiastically says yes, and assures him that they are almost there. He soon realizes that he is overthinking things and tries to push that absurd idea out of his mind. Barenka, on the other hand, observes the dangerous path and comments that this definitely is not the kind of place anyone would visit for free. Even so, the knight says that she will accompany them, but makes it clear that she intends to charge a silver coin for her services afterward. Ian is left speechless, since she was the one who decided to come with them. At that moment, Oberon finally returns, flying toward them and calling out to his master. The crow says that he only went to take a look from above. However, he found something unexpected. There are humans farther ahead. Ian immediately finds this strange, unable to understand what other people would be doing in that place. Hidden among the trees, Barenka observes the camp and realizes that the situation is much worse than expected. There are already more than 10 men just outside. Looking more closely, she notices several tents spread throughout the area and estimates that the entire group consists of somewhere between 30 and 40 people. Ian begins to suspect that they are tomb raiders, and judging by the scale of the operation, they are probably experienced people who already knew exactly what they were looking for. Lucy, on the other hand, decides to solve the problem in the simplest way possible: attack everyone. Barenka immediately shuts down her enthusiasm, since charging head-on against so many people with only the 3 of them would be practically suicidal. Lucy continues provoking her, asking if even she cannot defeat them, but the knight reminds her that she is still human, not some kind of invincible monster. Lucy then leaves the decision to Ian. He considers their options and soon begins thinking about using magic to make up for the difference in numbers. Judging by his expression alone, Barenka can already tell that some troublesome idea is forming and asks what kind of horrible magic he intends to use. MC complains about the way she talks, but continues thinking. Instead of directly confronting dozens of enemies, they only need to take advantage of the surrounding terrain. He remembers that they are near the Tarian cemetery and asks whether there is a slope nearby. With a suspicious smile, he says that he merely intends to give them a little push. By nightfall, the tomb raiders remain camped in front of the mausoleum, with no sign that they intend to leave anytime soon. While some of them stand guard, one man becomes puzzled when he sees his companion drawing symbols on the ground. The man explains that they are sacred words used as a charm to ward off ghosts. The two continue talking about the job and eventually mention the ancient Tarian legend, according to which the first Baron was said to have had a relationship with the Fairy Queen. However, a strange noise interrupts their conversation. They look around in fear, trying to figure out where it is coming from. A purple stain begins crawling across the ground in front of them, and MC watches with satisfaction from his nearby hiding place. The thing then rises into a grotesque shape and orders the tomb raiders to leave. The men freeze in terror at the sight of that abomination speaking and asking what the hell they are doing in that territory. The shadow continues advancing, and the tomb raiders panic, convinced that they are facing a ghost. When the creature grows even larger, chaos consumes the camp. The men begin fleeing while screaming that the first Baron Tarian has returned from the dead, while one of the lunatics even drops to his knees and begs the heavens for forgiveness. Sometime later, the man believes that he has escaped the worst of it, only for a sword to press against his neck. Barenka appears and orders him to surrender peacefully, because only then will his life be spared. The man insists that he does not even know who the mage inside the mausoleum is, prompting Barenka to call for Ian immediately. She points toward the entrance and says that apparently there is another mage inside the tomb. MC and Lucy are surprised, since they never expected to find someone like that in such a place. Before they can investigate further, a colossal explosion blasts through the mausoleum from within. Amid the smoke and rubble, someone begins coughing inside the tomb. Within the mausoleum, Inri and Kate, a mage from the Imperial Academy, tries to break through the barrier left behind by the Fairy Queen. He already knew there was a protective barrier meant to keep intruders away, but he never expected to find something so resilient. While searching for the companion who had gone to find another way in, Inrian senses a presence approaching and immediately goes on alert. The person who appears is Mud Baron, Count de Belle's illegitimate son. The man asks whether the mage managed to make any progress, but Inrian cuts him off and warns that a problem has arisen. Inrian notices the 3 intruders and warns Mud Baron that there are trespassers inside. At that moment, Ian, Lucy, and Barenka enter the mausoleum. Inside, Inrian warns Mud Baron that the intruders who just entered are no ordinary people. From what he can tell, there are mages among them. The discovery immediately puts the old man on alert, and the two realize that the situation has just become much more complicated. Meanwhile, Ian and the others advance through the dark corridors of the catacomb. Lucy finds the place creepy, and Barenka tells everyone to watch their step, since no one knows what could be hiding there. Along the way, MC begins hearing strange voices calling out to him and asking him to play with them again, which only leaves him confused since he has never played with those things before. The voices keep pestering him and even begin commenting on Ian's sleeping habits, telling him to roll over and make his snoring noises. MC is left speechless when he realizes that those things apparently even know how he behaves while sleeping. Suddenly, a bird swoops past the group, startling Lucy and making her cling to Ian. Still frightened, she points down the corridor and says she saw something farther ahead. MC tries to rationalize it and suggests that it was probably just another grave robber. She insists that it was not a person, but some kind of monster. Barenka observes their reaction and comments that they seem to scare easily because it is their first time inside a catacomb. The knight explains that those voices are probably fairies, since those creatures love imitating humans. Lucy believes her immediately, but Ian remains suspicious and tries to convince himself that they must simply be echoes. However, the voices themselves begin laughing and talking about playing the game again, making MC realize that the explanation is not quite that simple. After thinking more carefully about how those voices are spreading throughout the catacomb, Ian finally understands the mystery behind them. The wind is carrying and distorting the sounds, and this discovery causes the system to unlock a new skill, air art, sound manipulation, which allows him to control vibrations in the air to manipulate sound. Lucy is surprised to learn that there really is a mystery behind it. He explains that the wind can interfere with the transmission of sound, which finally explains why the voices seem to come from every direction. MC then begins testing his new ability and deliberately spreads those voices throughout the place. The creatures complain and ask why he is doing that, but Ian is already getting sick of their game. Irritated, he tells them to stop pestering him and ends up provoking the voices. However, they interpret it as an invitation to play with him and become even more excited, ready to continue their pranks. Ian tests the new skill and spreads his voice throughout the catacomb, letting out a hello that echoes through every corridor. Lucy and Barenka are impressed to see that the sound manipulation really works. As the group continues moving forward, MC confirms that the ability could be extremely useful. However, his expression soon changes, and he tells everyone to stay alert. Ian senses someone approaching and warns that enemies are nearby. To confirm their location, he uses earth magic and makes the floor of the catacomb tremble, concluding that they are probably the mages who entered before them. Shortly afterward, Inrian appears accompanied by 4 men and compliments MC on his skillful use of magic. Ian watches the group and keeps his guard up, especially because of the old man leading the others. Inrian asks if Ian practices earth art. He replies that he has studied it, but is not exactly a practitioner, then asks who the hell that man is. The old man introduces himself as Inrian Kate and says that he was once a wandering mage. MC simply replies that he is also a mage and introduces himself as Ian Eridus Raven. Upon hearing the name, the old man immediately connects the boy to the pyromancer Elidith and asks if he means that mage. Ian confirms that Elidith is his master. Inrian had already heard rumors that she had finally accepted an apprentice, but he never imagined he would encounter the boy there of all places. At that moment, Mud Baron approaches and pressures Inrian, asking if he truly intends to give up now. The old man merely coughs and tries to regain his composure. The old man extends his hand and says he is sorry, but Baroness Tarian's treasure belongs to their group. Apparently, knowing that Ian is Elidith's disciple does not change the fact that they are on opposing sides. MC immediately gathers wind around his body, as though he is about to cast a spell at them. However, in the middle of the incantation, he changes strategies and shouts for Barenka to attack. Barenka charges forward so quickly that Inrian barely manages to dodge the blow, realizing that the knight nearly reached him. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Mud Baron orders his men to get out of there immediately. The men begin running, but Ian is already preparing his next spell. A massive darkness engulfs the corridor, surrounding the enemies and completely taking away their vision. While the men panic, Inrian remains calm and begins concentrating an intense light in his hand. The old man releases his magic, causing a blinding light to explode throughout the catacomb and dispel MC's darkness. The light is so powerful that Ian and Barenka have to shield their eyes. The boy is surprised and tries to understand what kind of magic just neutralized his technique. He soon realizes that the old man is manipulating photons through light magic, a power naturally opposed to shadows. With the enemies regaining their sight and advancing once again, Ian realizes that if things continue this way, his group will end up at a disadvantage. Inrian's light continues blinding everyone, and Ian shouts for Barenka to close her eyes. The knight does not understand what is happening, but she trusts him and focuses solely on the wind around her body. MC surrounds Barenka with a current of air and explains that even without seeing, she can use the wind to sense what exists around her. While putting the idea into practice, Ian ends up creating a kind of magical sonar. The discovery grants him a new air art skill, echolocation, which can track the shape and position of objects through sound waves. Even the strange voices inside the catacomb become clearer with it. Barenka keeps her eyes closed and begins sensing everything around her through the movement of the air. Ian realizes that it worked and warns her that the enemy is directly in front of her. Guided by her new perception, the knight finally manages to locate Inrian without using her sight. Barenka senses the attack approaching and tightens her grip on her sword, ready to react. She charges forward with her eyes closed and, guided only by the wind, reaches Inrian before the old man can react. Her attack is brutal and sends the mage crashing straight to the ground. Mud Baron watches in disbelief as the knight manages to hit him without even opening her eyes. Ian takes advantage of the opening and immediately prepares another spell. He spreads darkness through the corridor once again, plunging the enemy group into pitch blackness. Mud Baron tries to keep the men calm and warns them that the mage is just ahead. He orders everyone to attack, but Ian's shadows strike first. The dark creatures begin attacking the men one after another, leaving the group completely disoriented and unable to understand what is happening. Realizing that the battle has descended into chaos, Mud Baron gives up and orders a retreat. The men run away without a second thought, while Inrian, still sprawled on the ground, desperately asks what they mean by retreating and begs them to take him along. Barenka keeps her sword pointed at Inrian, making it clear that any attempt to resist will end badly. Lucy then offers him a way out. If he surrenders, he will be treated as a prisoner rather than an enemy. Upon realizing that the girl standing before him is Baroness Tarian herself, Inrian finally understands the situation and stops resisting. Left with little choice, the old man agrees to surrender peacefully. With the battle over, they continue through the catacombs together, and Inrian takes the opportunity to praise Ian's abilities. When he learns that the boy was trained by Elidith, he says that he crossed paths with her a few times around 3 years ago. He then asks about the technique they used earlier, having realized that it involved wind magic. The old man becomes even more intrigued when he remembers that Barenka was able to move and fight with her eyes closed. Ian explains that he came up with the idea by using the echoes inside the caves as inspiration. The old man finally connects the dots and realizes that MC had Barenka use the wind to sense her surroundings. The idea excites him, and he admits that Ian is an impressive mage for someone so young. Lucy then casually adds that MC can also use dark magic. Inrian nearly loses his mind upon discovering that the boy commands such rare magic and asks if he can really manipulate shadows as well. Ian finds all that excitement amusing, considering that the old man himself had been using light magic only a few minutes earlier. The knight calls Ian over and shows him something she has just found along the way. It is a piece of paper that one of the men dropped while fleeing. MC picks up the note and realizes that it was left behind by the very man who escaped while swearing revenge after that humiliation. The old man grows curious about the paper and asks if it belongs to that baron, while Ian takes the opportunity to find out exactly who that man was. The old man explains that he is Count de Belle's illegitimate son, known as the Mud Baron. After being cast out by his own father, he ended up living as a tomb raider. MC keeps that information in mind while Inrian continues trying to recover his sight after all that chaos. Shortly afterward, the group finally arrives before an enormous door, and the old man announces that this is the place they have been searching for. Ian asks if the coffin of the first Baron Tarian is really on the other side, and Inrian confirms it. The problem is that he has already tried everything and has been unable to open the door. MC begins wondering whether some kind of mystery, perhaps one connected to the earth, might be involved in protecting it. At that moment, one of the men accompanying the group points out some information found in the records and tells them not to worry because Baroness Tarian should be able to open the passage. She is surprised to learn that the text says the Keeper of the Fairies would be capable of opening the door, leaving everyone wondering what the hell that title is supposed to mean. The old man draws their attention to a strange inscription carved into the door, written in symbols that he cannot decipher either. Lucy looks at the letters and, to MC's surprise, realizes that she can understand them. When Ian asks what they say, she reads the sentence aloud. "I will never forget our friendship." The moment she finishes reciting the words, the symbols begin to glow. Immediately afterward, a colossal burst of light erupts from the passage, indicating that the ancient protection has finally been unlocked. Lucy explains that the inscription is written in the language of the fairies. She learned it from her father and ended up memorizing a few phrases, even though she does not know exactly what they mean. Soon afterward, the girl finds a coffin with several stones piled on top of it and excitedly runs over to inspect it, but Inrian grabs her at the last moment and shouts at her not to touch anything. The old man reveals that it is the tomb of the Fairy Queen. Ian is completely baffled by the idea of a Fairy Queen being buried in that place and, for some reason, feels that disturbing those stones would be a terrible idea. He therefore asks why her tomb would be located directly above the coffin of the first Baron Tarian. Inrian explains that it was probably placed there so she could continue protecting the Baron's body even after death. Ian remembers Lucy's story about her ancestor having a relationship with the Fairy Queen and begins to realize that perhaps the legend was not as fabricated as he had imagined. As he thinks about the story of the Fairy Queen and the first Baron, Ian ends up imagining an overly romantic scene and quickly tries to push it out of his mind. At that moment, Lucy calls out to him after finding something farther ahead. On the wall, they discover ancient records connected to the first Baron Tarian, and she soon spots a sword embedded between the stones. Excitedly, she reveals that it is Erisil, the magical sword created with the power of the sun and moon. Ian is a little disappointed by its size, since the legends made him imagine a gigantic sword, but Erisil is not even 50 centimeters long. Even so, something about the weapon completely captivates him. MC grips the hilt, and as Lucy urges him to pull it out already, yanks Erisil free from the stones. At that very moment, an intense blue energy erupts around the blade. Ian feels the energy coursing through the weapon and cannot properly explain it, only sensing that there is some strange magic inside it. As he examines Erisil more closely, MC senses two completely different auras, one hot and the other cold, as though they truly were the powers of the sun and moon. But while he tries to understand this power, a voice suddenly echoes inside his head and commands him to awaken. Erisil remains enveloped in intense energy, with warm and cold hues swirling around the blade. Lucy is amazed by the sight and asks how he managed to make the sword react that way. MC explains that since she had said the weapon was created with the power of the sun and moon, he tried channeling the mystery of fire while the sword was glowing. It actually worked, although Inrian realizes that this is probably not the correct way to use the weapon. Ian agrees, since fire and the sun are not exactly the same thing, so the reaction ended up being somewhat strange. The old man believes that once Ian grows accustomed to the sword, he will probably understand the proper way to wield its power. The boy thinks so too, and decides that he simply needs to gain more experience with the sword until he can truly master it. Lucy excitedly asks if he liked the gift, and Ian assures her that it was completely worth it. She is pleased, saying that it is nothing compared to all the help she has received from him so far. Barenka suggests that they finally leave, since she is starting to get hungry. After leaving the tomb, Ian takes the opportunity to ask Lucy how long she has been able to read the language of the fairies. As the group makes its way outside, a small figure with long ears watches them while hiding among the bushes. Later that night, the group sets up camp in the forest, and almost everyone goes to sleep. In the middle of the night, Inrian hurriedly wakes Ian. The MC can barely open his eyes, but the old man insists that there is some strange presence outside the tent. Ian asks if something is out there, and Inrian admits that he cannot even properly explain what he felt. He is only certain that something was watching the camp. They go outside to check, but find no one. Barenka also looks around without noticing anything, yet the old man remains convinced that he did not imagine it. Ian wonders if it could be the Tomb Raiders, but the mage dismisses that possibility, as the presence definitely did not seem human. The MC starts wondering if he is facing yet another mystery when Oberon suddenly flies back and calls out to his master. As soon as the raven lands on his arm, Ian asks if he found anything. Oberon confirms that he did and says he saw some creatures that looked like tiny humans. The MC is immediately confused, trying to figure out what the hell these tiny humans could be. The raven points toward a more distant part of the forest. The MC heads in the indicated direction and activates dark vision so he does not have to wander around in the dark. At first, he finds nothing but trees and vegetation scattered along the path. However, when he looks more closely, something finally appears amid the darkness. Ian is completely astonished to find several tiny humanoid figures floating among colorful lights, suggesting that they are fairies. Ian watches the little creatures and realizes they do not seem to be preparing an attack. Before he can figure out what they want, Oberon starts getting restless and draws his master's attention to something hidden among the trees. Following the direction he indicates, MC finally spots the creature that had been watching the group. To him, it is simply an enormous bird perched on a branch. Lucy and Berenka also notice the animal and try to figure out what it is. Ian immediately recognizes it as an eagle owl, but notices something far more curious. The fairies are completely paralyzed with fear because of the owl. Seeing their panic, the boy decides to approach the bird and tries to coax it down from the branch. He speaks calmly, assuring it that he has no intention of hurting it and that it can come to him. The owl finally moves and lands on his staff. Ian manages to win over the eagle owl by offering it some food left over from dinner. The bird accepts without hesitation, leaving Lucy surprised by how easily MC handled such an enormous animal. Even Inrian is impressed and thinks Ian seems remarkably capable of communicating with nature. The fairies, meanwhile, continue keeping their distance, clearly worried about the animal's presence. However, the eagle owl stares at the tiny fairies with such a sinister expression that they immediately panic. MC tries to calm them down, assuring them that the bird will not bite anyone. After recovering from the scare, one of the fairies finally explains that they did not appear there by chance. In fact, they had specifically been looking for Ian. He asks why, and the little blonde fairy makes an unexpected request. They want him to return their sword. Suddenly, the eagle owl takes flight again, sending the fairies into another panic. Lucy, on the other hand, is already completely enchanted by the little creatures and practically begs Ian to return the sword immediately simply because they are too adorable. MC tells her to be quiet while he tries to understand what is happening. He takes out the weapon and shows the sword to the fairies, asking whether that is the one they are looking for. The tiny fairies immediately confirm it and explain that without the weapon, they can no longer produce their fabric. MC is completely confused by the idea of someone using a sword to weave cloth. The fairies explain that they use the power of the sun and moon, along with threads from jewel beetles, to create a special fabric called Shinryora. Inrian recognizes the name and reveals that it is also known as fairy thread, a magical fabric produced exclusively by them. Besides being cool in summer and warm in winter, it is so rare and valuable that not even a Duke of the Empire could easily get his hands on it. Lucy immediately becomes interested upon hearing how much it is worth. The fairies confirm that they need the sword precisely to produce this fabric. And there is more. According to them, Erisil was created by the fairy queen herself, together with the craftsmen of their people. In other words, the sword kept in the Tarian tomb has truly been part of fairy history from the very beginning. After explaining everything, the tiny fairies gather before MC and begin begging him to return the weapon. Ian does not even consider returning Erisil for free, which infuriates the fairies, but MC questions why the sword should belong to them when its original owner was the first Baron Tarian. He reminds them that he officially received ownership rights from the descendants of the Tarian family. So, at least for the time being, Erisil belongs to him. The little fairy does not know how to respond. Before the argument can continue, a powerful presence appears. The little fairies immediately fall silent and recognize the woman as Her Majesty, the current fairy queen. The queen reprimands the others for their rudeness towards someone connected to their people's benefactor. One of the fairies tries to correct her by saying that Ian is not even a descendant of the Tarians, but the queen understands that he legitimately received the rights to the sword. She then apologizes to MC for her subordinate's behavior. Ian sees no reason to prolong the matter, and the queen directly asks who the true descendant of the Tyrion family is. Without complicating things, he points to Lucy and answers that it is her. The fairy queen's attention immediately shifts to the girl. The fairy queen observes Lucy for a few moments and confirms that her aura truly belongs to the Tyrion bloodline. Then, as the representative of her people, she makes a request directly to the sword's rightful owner. She would like to borrow Erissil for a while. In exchange, the fairies offer Shinriora. Lucy nearly loses her mind the moment she hears the proposal, already imagining the fortune that rare fabric must be worth. However, Ian refuses without a second thought. The girl is outraged and asks how he can reject fairy threads so easily, but MC says that, in the end, it is still just fabric. Besides, he wants to continue studying the sword to better understand its power. Lucy can only conclude that Ian truly is a strange mage, while Inrian finds it amusing and praises the boy's extraordinary curiosity. The fairy queen then tries a different proposal. Instead of taking Erissil away, they could use only a portion of the power inside the sword and still give them Shinriora in exchange. Ian asks what exactly she means by using a portion of its power. She explains that they only want to share the energy stored within Erissil. If he allows it, the fairies intend to transfer that portion of its power into a runestone in the city without needing to take possession of the sword. MC begins considering the idea. After all, he cannot even properly use 100% of Erissil's power yet, so temporarily giving up a portion of it might not be as bad as it initially seemed. Therefore, MC accepts the agreement. The fairy queen asks whether she can borrow the sword for a while, but Ian immediately refuses that part. If Erissil needs to be taken to their city, he will simply go with them. Before they enter fairy territory, the queen imposes only one condition. He must swear, in the name of all the mysteries he seeks, that he will not harm her people. The moment he hears those words, the mysteries surrounding MC become agitated. He realizes that, as expected of a land connected to the fairies, that place has an extremely strong connection to mysteries. MC agrees and takes the oath. Satisfied, the queen allows him to proceed, and the two travel through the forest until they finally reach the fairies' home. Upon entering the city, Ian is impressed by the place. However, he soon realizes that something even stranger surrounds the city. The system registers a new mystery, awards him 50 skill points, and even shows progress in space-time magic, bringing it to 10 out of 100. Looking more closely, he notices that the entire city is surrounded by a space-time magic barrier. It practically transforms fairy territory into a separate world that no one can enter without their permission. The fairy queen is surprised and asks how he discovered it so quickly. He answers that it was merely a guess, but she praises his perception. In truth, this knowledge comes from his master's teachings. Ian remembers that she always treated space-time magic as something extremely dangerous, and even said that if the introduction already seemed too difficult, it would be better to give up immediately. She also warned that mages specializing in this type of power often tried to interfere with the future according to their own desires. Because of this, the boy learned from an early age to see space-time magic as a powerful field, but one filled with risks. Ian finally understands why his master always treated space-time magic with such caution. If those mages accept that he should follow this path, they will simply allow the future to unfold. But if they decide that the boy should not wield this power, they may do everything they can to stop him, even take his life. That was why her warning was simple. If a space-time mage tried to interfere, it would be best to give up immediately. While the MC thinks about this, the fairy queen draws his attention to the sword. He hands over the weapon, and the fairies begin preparing the process of transferring the weapon's power into the runestone. Curious, Ian asks how it works. One of the fairymen warns him that even if he explained it, Ian probably would not understand, so the MC asks him to explain it as simply as possible. The guy decides to test him and asks what number is smaller than 2. Ian easily answers 1. Then he asks what number is smaller than 1, and the MC simply answers 0. The response leaves the man stunned, and the other fairies also cannot believe that a human knows the concept of 0. Ian merely watches their reaction and thinks it would be better not to mention negative numbers, or someone there might have a heart attack. The queen then cuts the conversation short and tells everyone to stop wasting time. With everything settled, the fairies finally finish installing the runestone, and an enormous amount of energy gathers in the structure where the process is being carried out. Afterward, Ian mentally reviews the agreement he made with them. In exchange for giving up 33% of the magic sword's power, he will receive fairy silk every month. In addition, to help him use the weapon properly, the fairies also promise to help him research their people's ancient records. As if that were not enough, the queen herself also gives the MC 2 bracelets made of fairy silk. Ian looks at the accessories and has no idea where the hell he is supposed to wear something like that. Then, upon seeing Lucy and Barenka leaving, he calls them back and gives each of them a bracelet. Lucy excitedly asks if she can really keep it, and the boy says that of course she can. After all, they both went through a lot to get there. They cannot hide their emotions upon hearing those words. Lucy is delighted with the bracelet, while the knight carefully examines the gift, surprised that he would simply give away such a precious item. Barenka thanks him for the gift, and Ian says there is no need. For him, simply knowing that they like the bracelets is enough. Sometime later, back in human territory, Ian receives a desperate visitor. A man practically throws himself at Ian, begging him to save the Baron. The MC first tries to calm him down and tells the man to take a deep breath, but realizes that the situation seems serious and calls for Barenka. The knight appears immediately, ready for action. The man then introduces himself as Galadin, an employee of House Dobasi. The name catches Ian and Lucy's attention, since that territory is quite far away and they have practically no contact with that family. Without wasting any more time, Ian asks exactly what he means by save the Baron. The old man explains that his lord has been afflicted by an illness of unknown origin. They have already tried every medicine they know, along with prayers and other methods, but nothing has worked. The Baron's condition continues to worsen, and no one there can determine what is causing it. While they try to discover the illness's origin, the staff begin mentioning that Ian possesses some kind of mysterious power. Galadin had even heard stories that the young man used holy magic in Katina County to bring a knight back to life, and that was precisely how he learned of Ian's deeds. Now standing before the MC, the mustached man confirms that he hopes the mage can discover the cause of the Baron's illness. However, the man reveals something even more concerning. He believes his lord has been cursed. Ian asks whether he suspects that someone deliberately made the Baron ill. Unable to say for certain, Galadin practically begs Ian to examine the Baron personally. The boy feels a little awkward, since he has never studied medicine and knows that if it is a serious illness, he probably will not be able to do much. But if the problem truly has something to do with a mystery, perhaps his magic could be of some use. Besides, he has nothing urgent to do and might even learn a new spell in the process. Because of this, he decides to accept Galadin's request. After all that commotion, Ian finally manages to enjoy a little peace. Sitting calmly while drinking tea, he watches some farmers working and even hears someone complaining that they should harvest from one particular side first. As he watches the scene, the MC thinks that if his life had followed its normal course, he would probably be working on the farm with his parents at that very moment. But now he has become a mage and is sitting there drinking tea while watching other people do the work that might once have been his. Life really does take unexpected turns. While he is distracted by these thoughts, Barenka appears and asks what he is doing. Ian turns to answer but ends up impressed. Without her usual heavy armor, he realizes that she really is quite beautiful. The girl notices the MC staring and asks if there is something on her face. He immediately looks away and pretends that it is nothing. She then changes the subject and asks whether, after meeting Baron Dobasi, he intends to return to that place. The MC says no. In fact, he wants to continue heading even farther north. Barenka lowers her gaze slightly upon hearing this. Ian notices her strange reaction and asks if she needs something, but the knight says she was merely a little surprised by his answer. Ian tries to respond normally, but before he can explain, Barenka comments that she thought he liked Baroness Lucy. The MC nearly spits out his tea and asks where she got an idea like that. She explains that, precisely because she believed this, she assumed he would never want to travel so far away from Tarion. From the way she speaks, It becomes clear that Barenka had already taken that idea far too seriously. Ian grows even more uncomfortable when he realizes what kind of things she had been imagining. Barenka tries to defend herself by saying that it was not such an absurd conclusion, since he and Lucy really do seem very close. The MC explains that this is because Lucy has a very cheerful personality and tends to treat everyone with great familiarity. After that, Barenka directly asks whether the two of them are merely friends. Without hesitation, he confirms that they are. Upon hearing the answer, the knight seems to finally understand something and becomes strangely more at ease. Shortly afterward, she says that she will go on ahead. Ian simply agrees and bids her farewell. But before leaving, she calls out to the boy once more, saying that she wants to give him some advice. The MC does not understand until she warns him that if he keeps being that kind to every woman he meets, he will eventually regret it. Barenka says goodbye, telling Ian to explain everything properly to the Baroness. The problem is that the boy has no idea what exactly she wants him to explain. After apologizing to Lucy once again, the MC finishes preparing to leave Tarian's territory. His plan now is to continue searching for new mysteries before returning to the university. During their farewell, Inrian invites him to visit the university someday, and even says that, with his talent, the MC could become an assistant professor. The boy refuses immediately. He would rather stay far away from that. And so, almost without realizing it, the day of departure arrives. Inrian bids him farewell from a distance, while Lucy also waves enthusiastically at him before they go their separate ways. Later, the MC appears before Lucy at just the right time, because the girl has come up with an idea for the fairy silk. Since the material is so valuable, she suggests turning the silk into clothes and selling everything for a fortune. He likes the idea and admits that they really could make a lot of money from it. The only problem is that there are no artisans there capable of properly working with such a rare fabric. Because of that, Ian considers finding a tailor from Dobasi to handle the job. Lucy finds the suggestion strange and immediately asks if there is a problem. She is surprised when Ian says that he does not intend to return anytime soon. She thought he would come back shortly after checking on Baron Dobasi's condition. But the MC explains that his next destination is the north, and it is not somewhere nearby. He intends to cross Imperial territory and continue even farther north. When Lucy asks when he plans to return, he replies that he is going to travel in search of new mysteries, and will probably only return to Tarian to check on all the fairy silk that has accumulated, perhaps in 3 or 4 years. Upon hearing this, the girl is clearly dejected. To her, it sounds as though Ian's only reason to return is the fairy silk. The MC notices that something is wrong and asks if she is all right, but Lucy merely apologizes and asks to be left alone for a while. From that day onward, Ian is no longer able to see her. Whenever he asks about the Baroness, he receives the same answer. She does not want to see anyone, and the situation remains that way for an entire week. As he stares at the closed door, the boy thinks that he has already finished everything he needed to do in Tarian and begins considering continuing his journey. He does not understand why the girl suddenly changed, since this was not even a permanent farewell. He is only going away for a while and intends to return later. Even so, he remembers how she simply could not accept it when she heard that he was leaving. For a few moments, the MC even begins to wonder if he did something wrong. Barenka notices that he is lost in thought, but before the subject can go any further, Galadin appears and asks if he truly intends to leave that very day. The boy hesitates and once again looks toward Lucy's room. Deep down, he at least wanted to say goodbye to her before continuing his journey, and finds himself remembering the girl waving at him with her usual smile. But after so many days without being able to see her, he realizes that there is no point in continuing to wait. With little else he can do, he decides that it is time to leave. Meanwhile, Lucy remains alone in her room, clearly shaken when she hears that the MC is truly leaving. A maid informs Lucy that the mage has already arrived and that the group appears to be preparing to depart. The girl remains motionless for a few seconds, but merely replies that she understands and closes the door again. As soon as she is alone, she leans against the door and begins wondering what the hell happened. At first, she thought that her uneasiness was simply because she missed Ian, but she remembers that, originally, the two of them had only made an agreement. Lucy asked for help escaping, and Ian agreed. That was all. But the more time she spent by his side, the more anxious she became. Little by little, the girl begins to realize that she did not merely want the MC's help, she wanted him by her side. Embarrassed, Lucy calls herself an idiot for imagining that perhaps he felt the same way. Now, just thinking about facing him again leaves her wanting to disappear. To make matters worse, she worries about what he will think and whether it will bother him, since she does not want to be rejected. She tries to convince herself that the best thing to do is simply let him go. Lucy reaches that conclusion as well. After all that turmoil inside her own head, she wraps her arms tightly around herself and decides that she will not let things end this way either. She throws the door open and shouts for Ian to wait. Her call makes the MC stop in the middle of the hallway. When he turns around and finds Lucy standing there, he is surprised, while she also seems unable to believe that she managed to catch him in time. Lucy asks if he was still there, and Ian confirms that he was. He explains that Barenka said it would be rude to leave like that, so he decided to come back before departing. Lucy says that she understands, and the MC, still unsure about what happened between them, asks how she is feeling. Lucy finally lets everything out. She says that she was never sick. In truth, she was simply angry. When the MC asks why, she completely loses her temper. She complains that he was ready to leave far too quickly, as if everything between them were just another obligation. To her, that was precisely the problem. Ian wanted to fulfill the contract properly, move on, and bring everything to a natural end without even stopping to think about what it truly meant. Lucy then grabs his arm and directly asks whether he really has to leave. She wants to know if he truly needs to continue this journey and keep studying magic far away from there. At that moment, Ian realizes that Lucy has grown far more attached to him than she was letting on. Even so, he tries to reassure her and promises that he will return as quickly as possible. The MC also tells her that, as for the fairy silk, she can use it however she wants. But Lucy is no longer thinking about their agreement. Unable to hide her feelings any longer, Lucy holds the MC's face and kisses him. In the middle of that moment, Lucy even makes a threat in her own distinctive way. She orders the MC to keep his word and warns him that if he runs off anywhere else, she will raise an army and come after him. Ian plays along, accepts the threat without complaint, and responds lightheartedly. She, meanwhile, tries to hide her embarrassment and bids him farewell by calling him an idiot. With everything resolved, Ian continues his journey. But along the way, he notices something strange. Far more people are accompanying the group than he expected. He had anticipated that a priest or two might come along, but the entire entourage catches him by surprise. One of the men explains that if the Baron's illness was truly caused by some kind of curse or magical force, their presence could prove useful. After all, people connected to religion tend to be much more sensitive to magical phenomena. Besides, lifting such a curse from a Baron would also be an excellent opportunity to increase their influence and prestige. So, in the end, everyone there has their own reasons for taking part in the mission. As they ride through the forest, Barenka approaches and asks if he at least said a proper goodbye to Lucy. The MC freezes slightly, immediately remembering the kiss he received before leaving. After all, it had been his first kiss. Barenka notices his reaction and complains that it was already difficult enough having to endure the two of them constantly clinging to each other like that, so she has no intention of hearing any more details. Ian decides not to argue, but as they continue advancing through the woods, something among the trees catches his attention. For an instant, he has the impression that he saw someone passing through there. Before he can confirm anything, however, one of the members of the party shouts that there is trouble ahead because a large group has just appeared on the road. The man leading the group welcomes the travelers with a mocking smile, saying they have been getting quite a few visitors that day. Barenka asks who the hell he is, and the man confidently replies that he is Baron Damon. Ian is left speechless. Another Baron appearing out of nowhere already feels like a joke. Galadin is also puzzled because he has never heard of any Baron Damon in that region. When they ask which territory belongs to him, the bandit spreads his arms and announces that the entire region belongs to the great Baron Damon, while his men burst into laughter. The man then points toward the road and says they built it themselves. So if the group intends to keep traveling through there, they had better show their gratitude for the service and pay the toll. One of the escorts becomes furious and accuses the man of not even being a real noble. But before the situation gets any worse, MC introduces himself as a mage and Eridus's disciple. Upon hearing that there is a mage among the party, Damon shows interest and calls Ian over. He then looks at a red-haired woman traveling with the group and asks whether she has ever heard of a mage named Ian. She calmly replies that she has not. In fact, this is the first time she has ever heard that name. The redhead standing at the front is Kira, and the men around her immediately identify her as a great mage. Ian instantly realizes that she also wields magic. He remembers that the girl must have heard him introduce himself as Eridus's disciple. Normally, simply mentioning his master's name is enough to make people react as though they have seen a ghost. But the mage shows no reaction at all. Barenka also thinks that woman does not seem like an ordinary person. With few options, Ian decides that the best course of action is to settle this directly and announces that he will speak with her. The boy dismounts from his horse and concludes that, since he is cornered, he needs to demonstrate his strength to earn their respect. He gathers mana and unleashes a powerful blast of wind toward the other group. The gale tears down the road with such force that the men have to shield themselves, impressed by the mage's power. Kira is also struck by the pressure, but she remains silent and simply watches. The men in the other group begin mocking him, saying that the blast can hardly even be called magic. To them, Ian is nothing more than an ordinary mage, especially with Lady Kira on their side. Kira looks visibly embarrassed by all the confidence they have placed in her, but eventually says that she has no choice and will demonstrate her own magic. The redhead then begins performing a series of exaggerated movements, almost as though she were putting on a show. Ian watches in complete confusion because despite all her posturing, he cannot sense any mystical energy coming from her. Even so, she continues her supposed invocation, calls upon the great spirit dwelling in the heavens, and, at the climax of the ceremony, simply clasps her hands together and begs it to help the group. The scene then shifts back to Kira's past. When she was little, she lived alongside a traveling performer and learned this exact kind of acting from him, including how to beg for alms. Kira grows up traveling alongside that performer, learning tricks, performances, and even how to ask the audience for money. According to him, all of it was part of something very important, knowing how to survive. The two travel across the entire empire, arriving in a different city practically every day. They perform in the streets, put on their acts before crowds, and live on the little money they manage to earn. Kira admits that they almost never earned much. Even so, she was happy because that man was always by her side. Then one day, the two of them encounter a hooded man being treated with tremendous respect by the people. Curious, the girl asks her uncle why everyone admires that man so much, and he replies that it is because the man is a mage. She is fascinated to discover that mages do not need to pretend or deceive anyone because they can truly perform miracles. On the outside, that man did not seem much different from an ordinary traveler, but the way people treated him was completely different. She then gets an idea. Since they already look like wanderers, Kira suggests that the two of them simply pretend to be mages. That way, they could earn much more money and perhaps never go hungry again. But the man immediately rejects the idea. Pretending as part of being a simple performer is one thing, but impersonating a mage is something she could pay for with her life. In fact, he even says that death might be preferable to the fate awaiting someone who deceives others in that way. Frightened by his reaction, Kira falls silent as the man grips her shoulders and demands a promise. She must never pretend to be a mage. In the end, the girl agrees. At least at that moment, she genuinely tries to convince herself that she will not do anything so dangerously foolish. But as she watches how the city treats real mages, a question begins to form in her mind. Is pretending really that dangerous? In her mind, if no one discovers the lie, there should not be a problem. The idea becomes even more tempting as the two of them continue to be driven away and treated like ordinary beggars. The redhead begins to think that if she could pass herself off as a mage, perhaps they would finally stop living like trash in the eyes of others. Sometime later, during a rainy night, their camp is surrounded by a group of bandits. The men rummage through everything in search of valuables, but they find only junk and complain that there is nothing useful there. Then one of the men notices Kira lying on the ground. Since they found nothing to steal, he suggests selling the girl as well. She desperately calls out to her uncle, and the man reacts immediately. Despite being surrounded and clearly outmatched, He charges at one of the bandits to clear a path for her to escape. She obeys and begins running through the rain, while her uncle stays behind to hold off the bandits. Kira promises that she will wait for him, but the criminals become furious at his resistance. One of them lunges at the man and lands a brutal blow. Upon hearing the impact, the redhead stops and looks back. The man is lying motionless on the ground amid the rain. The girl panics, abandons her escape, and runs back to him, screaming his name. Kira throws herself down beside her uncle and desperately calls out to him, but the man does not respond. The bandits merely watch and jeer, saying that the street performer has finally kicked the bucket. Looking at his body, the little girl can only think that if she had possessed power, perhaps none of this would have happened. If she had pretended to be a mage earlier, earned money, and changed both of their lives, perhaps their future could have been different. Unconcerned with the girl's condition, the men decide to take her with them and figure out what to do with her later. Kira hears them, realizes the danger, and seizes the opportunity to run away. As soon as they notice her escape, the bandits shout for the others to chase after her. While running through the rain, the girl remembers her uncle's warning. If anyone discovered that she was pretending to be a mage, she would be killed, or perhaps suffer something even worse. But now, Kira reaches the conclusion that he was wrong. To change that fate, she needed to truly become a mage. So, even though she is surrounded and has no idea what is going to happen, Kira gathers her courage and begins her declaration, loudly announcing her name and claiming that she is a powerful mage. She spreads her arms, and suddenly, a series of brilliant explosions fills the sky, looking like a genuine display of magic. The men are completely stunned and begin to believe that she really is a mage. Wasting no time, she uses the performance to ask for help and warns them that the bandits are going to attack, trying to rally more people against them. Deep down, the girl has only one thing on her mind: survival. And that is exactly what happens. After surviving the attack, Kira ends up joining a group of mercenaries. Her performance as a mage is convincing enough to fool everyone, and she begins traveling with them while keeping up the charade. The problem is that this lie lasts much longer than it should. Over time, the mercenaries begin treating her like a true expert. Whenever Kira makes any random gesture, they immediately assume the great mage is analyzing the energy of nature and wait for a display of power. But inside, she is panicking. If she had known the lie would go this far, she would have fled at the first opportunity, and now she needs to find a real mage before she gets herself into trouble. And that moment arrives sooner than she would like. Unable to find another way out, Kira decides to resort to the trick she has been saving. She discreetly prepares the equipment concealed on her and, while trying to maintain the demeanor of a great mage, creates a gigantic explosion behind herself. The performance produces a scene grand enough to convince everyone that she truly cast a spell. Ian silently watches the flames and senses that something about them is strange. Even though it only lasts for an instant, he detects a different kind of mystery within the fire and begins analyzing what he just witnessed much more closely. In his mind, Kira did not merely cause an explosion. She seemed to be controlling the sparks, protecting her own body, and remaining unharmed amid the flames. In other words, in Ian's eyes, that was not a cheap trick, but an extremely refined display. Ian ends up even more impressed. To him, she appears to be a delicate, precise, and incredibly courageous mage. Kira, however, is in a completely different state of mind. On the outside, she keeps up the act. On the inside, she can only think about how she managed to fool everyone once again. But the situation grows complicated soon afterward. After seeing everyone's reaction, one of the men calls out to her and asks whether she would be capable of defeating MC. She immediately realizes that things might become dangerous again. The girl concludes that it would be better not to push her luck, because Ian has not even shown everything he can do yet. And if she bites off more than she can chew, the entire charade could collapse all at once. The man gets the message and changes the subject. Turning to the others, he makes a much simpler proposal. If everyone pays the toll, he will personally guide them safely to the border of the territory. Later that night, MC observes the camp and confirms the impression he has had from the very beginning. Those guys are basically a band of looters and grave robbers. Now, he only needs to discover what kind of favor they intend to ask of him. While he is thinking about that, Barenka finally finds him and complains that she has been looking everywhere for him. The boy explains that he was practically dragged there, but the knight quickly changes the subject and begins complaining about her accommodations, saying that her cabin is far too uncomfortable. Without the slightest shame, Barenka tries to swap places with him. MC immediately refuses and tells her to forget the idea, but she does not give up so easily. She points to a much larger cabin nearby and asks whether he can find a way to secure that place for her. He looks at the cabin and asks who is using it. Wasting no time, he walks straight over and calls for Kira. The girl appears in the doorway, wanting to know what happened, and MC says that he has a favor to ask. Kira crosses her arms and asks why he is standing there with that strange expression, saying that if he has something to say, he had better say it already. He asks a completely unexpected question. He wants to know whether she considers him a friend. The mage is surprised by that, and MC then asks why she suddenly started speaking to him in that tone. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.